Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education for the 25th of March, 2025. With us tonight, we have Mr. Krasnov, Mrs. Jacobson, myself, Mr. Peterson, Superintendent Testani, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Maxon-Canelli, and Mrs. Rinaldi. I know that we have Mr. Asa online and Mr. Lee will be joining us shortly. And if we could join together in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. We do have student reports tonight, and despite the fact that I normally start with Warde, I think I'm going to welcome Ms. Ferrante and Mr. Lee for our new representatives from Ludlowe. And thank you for joining midstream. And if you can lead us off.
Yeah, so the first thing that we wanted to touch on was our Future Business Leaders of America at Ludlowe, also known as FBLA. They attended the Spring Leadership Conference and 18 students placed in the top 5 across the state of Connecticut in competitions including business law, computer problem solving, and economics. And our whole chapter also achieved the silver status for the FBLA champions.
In addition to that, juniors at Ludlowe will be taking the SAT next Wednesday. Something to look forward to for all of us.
Yeah, we also wanted to touch on the FLHS Music Department Disney trip. We actually got back late last night. About 100 kids traveled down to Orlando from orchestra, band, and choir. From all grade levels, and students had the opportunity to perform on stage at Disney Springs and were able to participate in a workshop with professional Disney musicians. And we are also able to visit all 4 theme parks throughout the trip.
In addition to that, we wanted to highlight our Ludlowe student newspaper, The Prospect, because there was actually an article published about the Disney students trip recently, which is why it's relevant, but also it's just a platform where students can publish their opinions on issues, but also just like coverage of local events and events just across the entire world and like just whatever students are interested in writing about. So it's a good way for our students to be able to, they can read it and they can write like their own voices, their own opinions, and coverage of our local events. But if you guys wanted to learn more about the Disney trip, it's on our website, flhsprospect.com, which is linked on the Ludlowe website, and you can find it through our Instagram.
Also, prep is beginning for our Battle of the Houses. The Battle of the Houses is an annual event at Ludlowe where students from the 3 houses, Warner, Wright, and Webster, compete in competitions to gain points. Relay races, basketball, and hallway decorating, so that'll be taking place soon.
And our Ludlowe mock trial team competed at the Connecticut Supreme Court last week. It's a huge accomplishment. Our team is always very accomplished. They make it to high levels every year, and we're very proud, even though they didn't win, of all the hard work that they put in, just being able to compete in such an amazing forum as a team. It's an incredible activity. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I'll move on to Warde.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to begin by welcoming the new Ludlowe student reps to the team. We look forward to hearing from you, your student reports for the remainder of the time that we have left together, since I am also a senior and I'll be leaving soon, unfortunately. This Friday, Director of Student Services, Mr. Brown, and our head principal, Ms. Havana, will facilitate an extended room virtual assembly for juniors to complete the digital readiness SAT pre-registration on their Chromebooks and other devices. Next Wednesday, April 2nd, we will be administering the Connecticut SAT, just like Ludlowe, to our juniors. We wish them nothing but the best as they take this exam.
The freshman and sophomore classes had their spring dance last Friday, and it was a success dance for them, and I hope that they all had fun.
All right, next up, also on April 23rd, we will have our annual blood drive in the Warde Small Gym hosted by Mrs. Costin, who is in partnership with the American Red Cross organization. I personally look forward to this opportunity to donate blood to go towards saving lives next week.
Giacomo is hosting Meet the Coaches Night for all spring sports, and it's a great opportunity for parents to come and meet their athletes coach and ask questions if needed.
Finally, we'd like to wish our seniors good luck and congratulate them as some wait to hear back from colleges and others commit to their dream schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Is it Mexican?
Not a question, but just a comment for the four of you. Welcome. I just want to say I participated in the Warde softball fundraiser today by getting my crumble cookies. So if the four of you would like to grab one before you go, please help yourself. Or I'll keep walking over.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for coming for the first time. I hope we didn't scare you off, and feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting or, join us again in April.
I just want to comment how close you sound like Mr. Gavana's Sunday night phone call. You have the same inflection. I'm very proud.
All right, moving on to item 4 on the agenda, public comment. If anyone has wants to deliver public comment on items that are on tonight's agenda, an opportunity for you to do that. We'll allot 3 minutes to anyone who wants to come up and speak. Going once, going twice. Okay. Now we can move on to item 5, presentations, the recognition of excellence. We have the fall and winter student athletes, team FCAC and SEAC champions. Well, why don't you handle this?
Well, we're gonna call up our two outstanding athletic directors who, again, we say this every year, I can't say it enough, how much time and effort they put in to make sure that our student athletes have the greatest and most memorable high school experience possible. Mr. Giacomo, Mr. Parnes, they're gonna lead us off by introducing our student athletes, our teams, and our outstanding coaches.
Thank you for having us again, and giving us the opportunity to showcase some of our student athletes. We also did want to mention, so tonight we're gonna be talking about, we're introducing some of the champions for individual performances and for some teams. But we also wanted to mention that how, well some of the other teams did, even though they didn't win championships, just bring some of that to the forefront too and highlight that. So just for Ludlowe, this past fall, we had for the first time in school history, we had field hockey, boys soccer, girls soccer, and volleyball all earn home games in the FCAC playoffs in the same year. They've all done that before, but this particular year, they all did it in the same season. So we were extremely proud of them for doing that. And then field hockey finished, they went all the way to the semis in the state tournament, which was the farthest they've ever gone. And the football team made the state playoffs for the first time in school history. So there's a lot going on other than just, some of the championship things we've had. Also, in the winter, our cheer team qualified for the New England Regional Championship. And we also had some great coaching performances too. Our volleyball coach, Tina Rembish, was honored by being asked to coach the All-Star game for the Connecticut High School Coaches Association. And in the fall, we had Tom Newell, our girls soccer coach, Laura McClay, our field hockey coach, and Mitch Ross, our football coach, all were named FCAC Coach of the Year in their respective sports. And Laura was also named Class L Coach of the Year for field hockey. So just want to highlight some of that stuff too before we get to these athletes here. First up is Ella Gusson. I knew I was going to do that. Sorry, Ella. Ella Gusson, where are you? Ella Gusson. So, coming in, Ella. Ella is the Class L state champion in the 200-yard individual medley. On top of that, she also placed second in the 100-yard backstroke, placed second on the 200-yard medley relay team, and placed second in the opens for the 200-yard IM. So, congratulations to Ella. Congratulations.
Never met her.
Another champion for Ludlowe, we had Owen Brum. Unfortunately, Owen couldn't be here today, but he placed first in the FCAC championship in the hurdles. So congratulations to Owen. For the co-op teams, we had our fencing boys team finished first in the state championship for foil. And I apologize if I mispronounce these names, but these are the four members of that team. Jaden Zhang, Aaron Chandra Mohan, Louis Kazenayuv, and James Geckler. So congratulations, defense. And for the co-op bowling team, we're gonna bring up Coach Tim West and Frank Sahagian to introduce their members. And they were state champions in the CIVL this year. So Coach, introduce your team, step forward.
First, we have from our sophomore class, Abigail Copperthread, come from Warde. From our junior class from Ludlowe, we have James Faulkner. In our senior class, we have Henry Robbins from Ludlowe. We have an award from our senior class, Alex Capuano. And our senior from Warde and our captain is Will Jacobs.
Coach, can we hear any highlights?
Sure. Greenwich actually was the last team we had beat in the last match. They beat us for the first time and we were down 1 point going into the last match of the year. And we had to take them and we beat them handily. And so that's the biggest highlight of the year, actually, in the way we finished the year. I'd also say another highlight is there was a singles and doubles championship at the end of the year and we won both of those. Our doubles team was Will Jacobs and James Faulkner won the doubles, and Will Jacobs won the singles. And Will had an average of 224, which is the highest that we've seen in 15 years for my coach Tim.
There was also, the bowling team was on the news, which was a great piece and hopefully circulated around to you folks as well, but it's on our Warde Instagram, and if anybody has a chance, check that out.
Congratulations.
Your picture?
Okay, we have one more co-op sport, and that's boys wrestling, and we have boys swim, I'm sorry. We have Michael Ivanoff here from Fairfield Ward High School. Michael, come on up. He placed first in the 100 freestyle and second in the 50 freestyle. He was first in the 100 freestyle. He broke the current Ward school record in the 100 free with a time of 46:06, which the previous the previous record was 46.44. Michael is going to Johns Hopkins University in the fall, where hopefully he'll continue.
Jeez.
The times are,
What was his 50?
Michael, what for 50?
21-1.
A little faster than.
Okay. Going back to the fall for a second, we want to recognize two of our cross-country student athletes. So come on up. So Sophie Spellman was the FCX champion in the 5K. She also set a course record of 18 minutes and 27 seconds. And Todd kind of prefaced the ceremony tonight, but Sophie came in first out of 115 varsity runners in the FCX. Into the winter. Alexandra Morgan, who is Sophie's running partner, and these guys go neck and neck. Alexandra won the state championship in Class L. She won the individual championship with out of 140 runners. So those were our two of our fall cross-country champions, again, conference and state champions. In indoor track, Sophie won, she's the individual FCAC champion in the women's 1600 meter. Yep, Luke, come on in. Luke is also an FCAC champion. He placed first in the men's varsity shot put. I'll take a picture of the three track and field stars. I'm sure they'll be back in the spring.
Any of them seniors?
Yes. Alexandra is not, but I don't think they're announcing where they're going. Luke. So our girls' basketball team also made it to the FCAC finals, which we fell a little bit short in the game, but it was a really great experience in the new Fairfield University arena. And Coach Dave Danko got the FCAC Coach of Excellence Award. Just wanted to mention that. And then no strangers to the boardroom is the Warde Wrestling Program. So the student athletes are training for nationals, so some of them came directly from a 5 to 7 training session. I just want to first start with the team accolades. The Fairfield Warde Wrestling team is the FCAC champions for the 3rd year in a row. Coach Shaughnessy will go through the 8 individual champions that led us to the team championship. The Fairfield Warde Wrestling team is also the Class XXL state champion for the 2nd year in a row. Again, Coach will come through. Coach Jason Shaughnessy got FCAC Coach of Excellence. He also got the 2025 Connecticut High School Coaches Association Head Coach of the Year Award in wrestling. The team received the 2025 Connecticut High School Coaches Association Team of the Year Award in wrestling. And our own coach, assistant coach Brandon Folco, got the 2025 Assistant Coach of the Year in wrestling. And Brandon? I'm gonna let the very proud coach, Jason Shaughnessy, introduce the individual champions, or at least read their names if they're still training.
Sure. So first, I just want to remind everyone that we did promise you we'd be back this year.
That again?
We'll see, but it was a really special year. You know, we did a lot of really neat things. One thing that we didn't mention is we beat Danbury, which was the first time they've lost in the FCAC since 1986. So it was a really super year. In the FCACs, we won 8 out of 14 weight classes. So with 18 teams, we won more than half of the weight classes. We had 4 all-state wrestlers, and again, we won FCAC's last 3 years in all-state double Ls. So I'm just gonna go over, I got a little cheat sheet here to make sure I get it all right, but first, Victor Novias. Victor was FCAC champion. Luis Sirocco was FCAC champion and Class XXL finalist. Bill Ryan was FCAC champion and 3rd at states. Paul Trump was 5th in FCACs. I want to highlight the guys that aren't here because they really did a super job. And again, I apologize, they're not here. They're leaving Thursday morning to wrestle in high school nationals in Virginia. So with wrestling, making weight and getting training session stuff is super important. So they're actually on their way here. They could be here any minute now, but we don't want to hold you up. But you know, they found it really important to be here, but they really had to get this practice in. So real quick, Jude Grammatico was an FCAC champion and state double L champion. Captain Owen Shime was an FCAC champion and double L finalist. Dominic Spadero, who's not here, had a super career. He was FCAC champion, double L finalist. He was a state open champion this year, and he was the FCAC Wrestler of the Year, the entire FCAC. Cole Grenier, captain, FCAC and state champion. And he set new wins records and pins records for a season. And Anthony Albanese, captain, was FCAC and state champion. So again, these boys did an awesome job. 4 all state athletes, 8 FCAC champions, 8 all FCAC wrestlers. It really was a special year, and I really appreciate the opportunity to bring them to here, show you all the hard work they've been doing and be represented. And thank you very much for taking the time to represent us. We really appreciate it. We're working as hard as we can to make sure we get back next year.
Can we ask him to stick around and he can bring them up?
If he thinks it's not, so.
For the picture, but not in the picture.
Anthony, come on.
Just hide back here.
This is the album, Anthony album.
Trying not to show my little face in the
Gotta get one burger.
burger.
All right, thank you.
Coach, if you're here in the next few minutes and more of your team shows up, please flag them. I'd like everyone to get the applause. If they're on their way here, I don't want them to.
If they come here real soon, we'll pop in.
That's great. Appreciate that.
Spring sports are on the way. Hopefully, we have some good news to report in June. Just kicked off last Saturday.
Yep. Weather's good, hopefully it stays that way. Yesterday was a little rough, but it was much better. Hopefully it stays that way. It makes for a much better spring season.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can see you all out at a spring event.
That'd be great.
Goes by fast. Spring goes by fast. So,
Thank you again for having
Thank you
us
for
and your
everything.
support throughout the entire year.
It's always wonderful to have you here and to recognize really the hard work and dedication of these kids. It's a great thing to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have more.
We do have more. I get the pleasure of presenting the next two awards to someone I work closely with every day, sometimes at night, sometimes on the weekends and at night. I just want to say thank you to Rachel, and thank God she's here tonight to receive these because this comes with a lot of hard work and a lot of thought. In 1975, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education established the Bonnie B. Carney Award of Excellence in Communications to recognize districts that effectively communicate with parents and the community at large. This year, Fairfield Public Schools was recognized as the winner of both the Social Media Award and the Website Redesign Award. Tremendous accomplishment given the number of competing districts. The district's social media presence has grown substantially in the last year on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Fairfield Public Schools social media is another strategy to meet families where they are and provide timely information from school closures and bus delays to bright spots highlighting student and staff achievements. Strongest social media following for Fairfield Public Schools is on Facebook, with families and community members most interested in posts featuring talented learners and dedicated staff. For example, a spring post highlighting a student who earned a prestigious award garnered over 32,000 impressions. In addition to seeking out many happenings taking place in each school, the communications department, which is a department of one, receives daily submissions from families, staff, students. Fairfield Public Schools social media is another avenue for the district to answer questions that are asked within a post in a timely manner. The redesign was a tremendous amount of work. I know Rachel worked closely with many of our departments that are represented here tonight. But throughout the 23-24 school year, the communications department worked collaboratively with IT to redesign the Fairfield Public Schools homepage, along with revised homepage navigation and design for all 18 schools in the district. Pages on the district website are updated with pertinent information and resources for staff and families on a consistent basis. One example of a recently refreshed page is the district wellness page, where people can find information on topics such as how to have conversations with their children about safe social media usage, suicide prevention, mental health resources, and visitors can click on various navigation boxes to easily find helpful information. These pages were a collaborative project between special education and the communications department in an effort to prioritize critical resources for the school community. This time I'd like to present Rachel with both outstanding awards, as she has more than deserved recognition from community.
Wait, this is
a little blurry, Rachel. I might have to use my.
Sure, it's postable, whatever you do.
Yeah, exactly. I don't wanna mess this one up. Okay, you wanna get the other one or just use one?
Oh,
Okay.
Fine, you got double winner.
this is the social media one. This is the important one, right?
Boy, zoom in on that one. Nice.
Any comments from the board? Want to offer anything? Seeing that, oh, this goes on.
I just want to give a shout out to the wrestling team, being a former wrestler, to do what we heard they did. I'm jealous. I wanted to beat Danbury. Great job.
Proud tradition here in Fairfield. All right, well, moving on to old business, item 7A, approval of policy 3430, periodic financial report with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3430, periodic financial report. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Maxon Kelly, seconded by Mrs. Rinaldi.
I didn't receive any questions, so
Any questions or comments from the board? Chapman, please.
Through the chair, to Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, at the last meeting I had indicated, a question regarding, the first sentence that is proposed, like, the proposed change that is struck, in regard to the monthly basis, which I totally understand why that would change. However, given what's in front of us, it seems that the only information that we would be provided is during the quarterly reports by striking the entirety of that first sentence. So I had raised at the last meeting, simply striking on a monthly basis, which I totally understand, because that doesn't necessarily always need to happen, but indicating regarding that the board would need to be notified regarding any current or anticipated condition that might materially affect our budget in between the quarterly reports. I think that's important to keep. So before I make a possible amendment, I just wanted to think if there was any further thought by the committee or yourself on that topic, or if you were comfortable with this way, that it is by entirely striking that out.
yeah, so our focus in our discussion was simply our focus was solely on the word monthly. And so with that, we took out the whole statement. The rest of it was never even part of our dialogue. So I didn't bring it back to policy for reconsideration. I just figured I'd wait to see if you wanted to make the amendment, but I would certainly say what you describe is an expectation of the board, regardless, one we've been assured of through 5 superintendents. So I would be perfectly comfortable with that. But that's just me.
Comfortable with me making the amendment, or, okay. And I appreciate Mr. Peterson's comment at the last meeting that this is something that the finance committee is regularly looking at as well. Just think important, for our policy to say that if anything, of course, we would expect that any superintendent to provide us with an update of some material like we have tonight on the agenda comes up. But just for going forward as a term of policy to keep that provision in there as an expectation. And of course, I'm assuming the other boards as well would expect for that to be happening. So with that, then I'll just make a proposal for a really simple amendment to keep the first sentence in the policy, but striking on a monthly basis out of it. And that just simplifies, clarifies the expectation is kept, that we be notified of anything that is material to us, but not necessarily on a monthly basis if there's nothing to provide. So that's my amendment, if someone wanted to second that.
There's a second, I'll take Mrs. Guernsey.
I think I provided the rationale for the amendment, so.
I'll read the whole sentence for this, so the sentence that originally was struck out in its entirety used to read, the superintendent or designee shall update the board on a monthly basis regarding any current or anticipated condition that could materially affect the budget. And your amendment is to change that to the superintendent or designee shall update the board regarding any current or anticipated condition that could materially affect the budget.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Race, are you cool?
He had to step off for a quick minute.
Oh, that's okay. This is a voting item, so any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, back to the board, vote on the amendment. All in favor? We have Mrs. Rinaldi, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, Mrs. Guernsey, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Jacobson with a unanimous 6-0 vote. Any opposed? Abstentions? 6-0. Now back to the main motion. Any further questions or comments? Any comments from the public on the amended measure? Bringing it back to the board, all in favor? Vote is 6-0. Thank you. We have some more.
We do.
We can switch back to that. No one has any objections?
Again, thank you for your flexibility in allowing us to do this one.
Want to make sure we get everybody. This is a big deal.
Wow. You guys stand over here.
Well,
Okay, just to keep it consistent, Victor, when I call you to step up, whatever. Victor, FCAC champion, nice job. Jude Grammatical, FCAC and state double-O champion. Captain Owen Scheinman, FCAC champion, double-O finalist. Captain Dominic Spadero, FCAC champion, double-O finalist, state open champion, and FCAC wrestler of the year. Louis Sirocco, FCAC champion, double-O finalist. Dylan O'Brien, FCAC champion. Cole Grenier, FCAC champion, state double-O champion, set the new ward record for wins with 54 and pins 44. Anthony Albanese, FCAC and state champion. Paul Sirocco, fifth in the FCAC. Christian Mendoza, FCAC finalist, and Andres Mendoza was third in the class states. So.
all right.
Right? Get a team photo now. Yes, sir. Come on over here, guys. Let's get a better photo. Little guys in front.
This one says it's.
Jason?
Jason, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Take two.
Is he sitting?
Saw the text. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will do everything within our power to try and be back next year. I promise you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Can I give a quick aside? Coach, I wanted to share one quick personal story, and of course your team is out the door, but I'm not gonna say anything that they don't know. But just to the board to know how lucky we are with some of the staff members that we have and how important they are in the lives of our students. And Coach Shaughnessy is someone who also teaches at our school. And just so that you know how impactful he is, Sunday morning, this was a couple of years ago, I'm going to Park Avenue and going to the Tasty Yolk truck to get some breakfast with my son who was just graduating, who's no stranger to Warde athletics and certainly is bigger than life in his own mind now and then. And watching him spot Coach Shaughnessy at the truck, literally sat up, stood up straighter and then said, "Hello, sir." I mean, who does that? And it was just, it said to me everything I could possibly want to know about Coach Shaughnessy and how lucky we are to have him. You're very
Guys
impactful.
who run Tasty Yolk, who own Tasty Yolk are wrestling alumni.
No wonder you're there.
Nice.
Yeah, well, just, you're very impactful, Coach. We're lucky to have you.
Enjoy the support and work.
Thanks, everyone, for your indulgence with the digression back. We did that. We'll move on to item 7B, approval to delete policy 3430.2 quarterly reports with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve to delete policy 3430.2 quarterly report. Moved by Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by, I'll second it.
And again, the policy is rendered, unnecessary given the one that we just voted on. And so what the decision was to delete.
Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, out to the public, such as it remains. No comments from the public. Back to the board. All in favor? We have 7-0. Thank you. Nick, are you on?
He had to step away, right? Read what he wrote to me.
Move on to seven C, approval of policy 3542.41, professional standards for food service personnel. With the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3542.41, professional standards for food service personnel. Jackson Kennelly, and I'll second it.
So this policy, again, as you can tell by the entire red text, is brand new. I didn't receive any questions on it, but Ms. Laborious is here if anybody has any.
Questions, comments? Going out to members of the public. And Ms. Fronte, you're a member, you could comment.
I don't have any comments. Thank you, that.
Seeing none, bring it back to the board. All in favor?
And I believe Mr. Asa is back. I don't know if he's muted.
Aye.
There.
8-0, including Mr. Asa.
I
I'm sorry.
apologize. I was on Mr. Peterson for the first two. I was on another device that would not allow me to unmute. So not sure if you can put into the record, I was a yes vote for the previous as well.
We could do that.
For all three.
There are more votes to take, Nick, so you'll have an opportunity.
Sorry about the technology.
All right. Item 7D, approval to delete policy 3541.32, transportation for school-related trips, with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve to delete policy 3541.32, transportation for school-related trips. Ms. Maxon Canelli. Mr. Lee, seconds.
So this one, again, not necessary. Put my note on this. This is not a required policy, and this information here is already covered as part of the transportation contract.
Ms. Jacobson.
Just a quick question. By deleting this, we're not disqualifying any possibility to actually use private transportation in the event that that would be necessary to fulfill this purpose if something's missing from the contract that we would need it for. So I just want to make sure that we're not, hand tying the administration in order to use private contracted companies, should that be necessary.
I did not ask staff that, so I would need somebody else. Here we go.
Thank you.
Please restate that question.
My question is that by deleting this policy, we are not hand tying the administration to actually use private transportation companies in the event that our contract on transportation didn't cover something that might be necessary. Meaning, if we want to use a private company, we don't need this policy in order to afford us to do that. Okay.
Can I note that the policy schedule for deletion says specifically transportation for athletic events?
Right. Either way, just want to make sure that if we needed to use one, we could use it without having this policy. That's all I'm saying.
Entirely fair.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Public? Seeing no comments from the public, all in favor? 7-0 and Nick is 8-0. Thank you. Item 7E, approval to delete policy 3541.33, special transportation for exceptional children. With recommended motion that the Board of Education approve to delete policy 3541.33, special transportation for exceptional children. Ms. Maxon Canelli, seconded by Mr. Lee.
So this one is, the information covered here is covered via the PPT process, and therefore there is no need for this policy.
Thoughts? Public? Taking a public comment back to the board, all in favor? 7-0, 8-0. No in favor. 7F, approval to delete policy 6164.2, guidance and counseling, with the recommended motion that the Board of Education approves to delete policy 6164.2, guidance and counseling. Maxon Canelli, second by Mr. Lee.
So this is again, where this policy is not mandated. There's no policy need for it. Mr. Mancusi did check with our attorney, who was concerned about any exposure this could create for us. The one thing that Mrs. Guernsey had raised is concerned over if we have any similar language in other policies that leave us likewise exposed. I couldn't find any, but we'll be on the lookout for it if we should come across it. And again, the concern being about the his or her potential ability and full extent, those are pretty tough phrases. And so that's just something we'll keep an eye out for.
Any comments from the board? Seeing none, out to the public. Comments from the public? Bring it back to the board. All in favor? And Mr. Asa, so that's another 8-0 in favor. We got one more of these and then on to some more meaty stuff. 7G, approval to delete policy 6164.5, speech, language, and hearing. With the recommended motion, the Board of Education approved to delete policy 6164.5, speech, language, and hearing. Ms. Maxon Connelly, seconded by Mr. Lee.
So this is another policy which we do not need. We follow the law on this via the PPT process. So this policy is not needed.
Comments by the board?
Question?
Oh, just
I just have a question on, I hear the rationale regarding PPT and IEPs. There are students that get speech, language, or some of these that don't have an IEP necessarily and under a 504 per se. So get a little more language about deleting this policy as it pertains to the rationale.
It
of
would
it
be
being-
covered under 504 as well.
It would, okay, so no difference between okay, thank you for the clarification. That's my only question.
further questions or comments? Bringing that to the public. Being none. All in favor? Another 8-0 vote. Thank you very much for going through that. Or I guess that's it. Work we need to do. It's important work, but it's not the glorious stuff. Moving on to new business though. Item 8A, review and feedback on draft Dwight Elementary educational specifications. This is something that I'm happy to turn over to Ms. Jacobson to preview. I know that they've been working on it for months, literally, at this point, and timely that the working and town level is interested in seeing some of this work. So it's time for us to sink our teeth into it as a board.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this to the board. The Facilities Committee, along with administration, have reviewed 4 versions of this draft so far. Thought it was in a place where the full board for your input, feedback, thoughts, questions. Certainly not anticipating it ready being for a first read at this point. Simply just wanted to bring it to you all, kind of share some of the work that we've done on the ed specs in the last few months on it, which has been significant revisions, along with our administration, especially Mr. Papa George. Before we dig into the meat, if you don't mind, Mr. Peterson, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Papa George just to give a high-level overview of how we came to this draft, anything he'd like to entail, and then we are happy to go page by page and give a little more context and detail to what is before the board.
Mr. Hanson.
Oh, and Mr. Hanson, good evening, Mr. Hanson. Oh, great. So Mr. Hanson has joined as well. So Mr. Papa George, any opening thoughts?
So just so the board knows, the facilities committee, when we got together, we talked about the ed specs and how we've reused many ed specs over the years. And it was time to I don't want to say reimagine, but make them a better, stronger ed spec, especially since this is a program that we've never done before, which is the possibility of building a new building with a pre-K through 5th grade. So with that said, we were talking about who was gonna write them, what we were gonna do, and I reached out to one of our Colliers International, who's been our project manager and owner's rep for many years with us with the projects. So we reached out to them. They made the recommendation of the Mr. Hanson, who was very involved with the Westport Long Lot School ed specs. So, and he can give you a little bit, he's on tonight, about his background, but he's been writing ed specs all over the state of Connecticut for a few years now. You want to, Mr. Hanson can jump into a little history on himself.
Mr. Hanson, do you want to give a little introduction about yourself and the project?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and the members of the board and superintendent and administration. Yes, so my background is as an elementary teacher, elementary principal for 16 years in South Windsor and 10 years as assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. So I've been involved in EdSpec development beginning in South Windsor when I was there for all 4 elementary schools in South Windsor, and then ultimately throughout the state for the past 10 years. So, you know, I have a keen understanding of how elementary schools work and how programs work in the spaces that they need to make their programs work in an ideal fashion.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobson, do you want to?
Sure. So what you have before you is the 5th iteration of a draft. Many of the same components of our historical ed specs in here in terms of an introduction and our mission, our goals, our vision. And then the way we changed the structure a little bit, the pre-K part and the K-5 part had originally come to us kind of intermingled with each other, going through general ed spaces, administrative spaces, the core spaces like cafeteria, library, those things. What we ended up actually doing is pulling those 2 things apart. So you have your K-5 in total, then you have your pre-K in total at the end. So they can be separated out and looked at individually, similar to what we put on our waterfall, right? So we had a K-5 and then we had the pre-K part. So we did structure that way. That's something that we're interested in getting feedback on. I will say that there were many discussions on few of the spaces, not many, but a few of them. Again, looking for feedback, and I'm happy to highlight what those were as we go through it. The committee did cut, shall we say, or reduce 3,375 square feet from the overall project through our various revisions, mainly to the K-5 part. We assured through the consultant and administration that we were adhering to the state. I mean, many people don't seem to understand, maybe on the town side a little bit, that there are state space guidelines that drive these spaces that we are to adhere to. Districts don't just make up how much a space is for a social worker or for a classroom. There are space guidelines that we adhere to, especially for projects that are going to the state for reimbursement. So we can assure the board that that has been triple checked, that the space requirements are what the state guidelines dictate for those spaces. And then, let's see, what else that's of important note. Happy to walk through what we reduced and what's in here, some of our sticking points that we wanted to bring to the board. But what is different about these ed specs from historical ed specs is that there is no ed spec in Fairfield that contains any special programming whatsoever. Whether that be Mill Hill, whether that be Osborne Hill, there are no ed specs that include CLCs or TLCs or ELAs or pre-K or anything else. They don't actually, in that regard, represent how our schools are used today. The administrative input that we were requested in our long-range facilities plan, you'll see are built in here, such as the SEL rooms and our dedicated small spaces for services are also incorporated into here. I will highlight on the pre-K space, there are a few spaces that are in here that the board did not include in our long-range facilities plan that the administration requested to be added, even though we did not envision those spaces on the pre-K side. It is a significant amount of square footage. But again, it comes back to the board in what you want to include as we send it off to the town boards. As Mr. Peterson stated, this is information that the working group is requesting. They at least have this draft as they get started and as look at the building. However, it is important that we continue to do our part of the work on this and move this forward to the other boards. But we fully anticipate taking this back, collecting your feedback, making further revisions with Mr. Hanson, discussing that with administration, and then coming back ultimately to the full board with the first read. And goal is to have this done, I would say, by the end of the school year, hopefully. So just that's where we are.
If I can jump in before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, a question probably for Mr. Hanson, just in a general sense. Ms. Jacobson is right. This doesn't look like a lot of the ones that we've done in the past, but it is a new type of project, a larger project. Is this format, is this structure largely consistent with what you're seeing around the state for similar projects?
This is very consistent with what I've done for multiple schools in multiple districts over the past 10 years.
While it may be an innovation for us, it's not going to be a strange document from the state standpoint.
No, it should not.
Oh, Mr. Asa.
Thank you. Just one, I have a couple questions, but one quick clarifying one for Mrs. Jacobson. And it might be my own misreading, but it looks like in the kindergarten, we're factoring 3 classrooms, in grades 1 and 2, 3 classrooms for each. But then when we get into 3, 4, and 5, we're dropping down to 2 classrooms each. I was just wondering if you could share the rationale on that.
Absolutely. Yep, so as you know, Dwight currently is at 378, Mr. Asa, so that's 18 sections. As we talk about school sizes in Fairfield. That was definitely one of the areas that we talked about, is how many sections to include. And it originally came to us with the 18. Given the enrollment projections, we talked about reducing that. And after deliberation and consultation with the administration, didn't want to drop it too far down. So we went to the 15 at this point. There was push and pull on the committee level in terms of building a school for today versus a school for 60 years from now, right? So the expectation is that our schools now survive and live for 60 years. And where we took the space one was from the upper level, and that was intentional in the sense that the upper grades, 3, 4, and 5, the square footage on the square space guidelines is a little bit smaller than your early elementary grades, and wanted to keep the larger classrooms should they be needed for other purposes in the future versus the smaller spaces. So really it was just a judgment call on where to take them from, and that square footage. So happy to hear anyone's input.
I was in grades 1 and 2, though, they're also showing a 900 square foot classroom, which is the equivalent of grades 3, 4, and 5. So I guess my question is thinking down the road long term, you know, if we're trying to build capacity, and we are building, you know, a new school here, I was just curious. I'd appreciate the feedback and the rationale on that. I mean, I understand that we're building in you know, these language and music and all of the other art and dedicated classrooms. So we capture that. I just wanted to know, maybe to the committee or to the administration, Mr. Testani, do you feel that the capacity of this would be conducive to accepting students if we were, as the town evolves and all of these developments get built, if we needed swing space to move kids around, would this project sufficiently capture that capacity?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a lot of discussions. I think exactly what Mrs. Jacobson mentioned. We're trying to think into the future and not just look at the moment when we talked about some of these spaces. There was a lot of deliberation as we should reduce. But I think we've made some mistakes, you know, as we all are aware in the past, and we didn't want to invest a lot of the money into this building and fall short. And that's why you'll see, and some people, you know, on other town boards may question the need for certain spaces. But again, I think these are forward thinking in terms of where public education is going. And, you know, no one can predict 25, 30 years from now, but I think we have some flexibility as we move forward to be able to leave this building in a place where future boards and, you know, future folks can make decisions that will serve the needs well.
Can I just, I get to you, Mr. Krasnow. I want to say, you mentioned Mrs. Jacobson enrollment projections. I want to make sure for the sake of the public, and I mentioned this to individual board members, we were going to have a presentation on our new 10-year projections tonight. We've had to postpone that I do want the public to know that we've got new numbers, and kind of consistent with this project. The number, I think that you've been working around is the 10-year max for Dwight with the lines as they are is 240. But we're also anticipating in this document doing 2 CLCs with 12 kids each in. That would bring it up to a 264, put it at about an 85% utilization, which is near where our guidelines are now. And for the public, if they want to look this up, it's actually on the website now, in the main Fairfield Public Schools website part, under enrollment, where we have the rest of our enrollment documents. And we will be talking about that in more detail in an April meeting.
And can I just follow up before you
Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
on to Mr. Asa's point too? Also being mindful, Mr. Asa, not only for town boards and the approvals, but also through the state submission process, you're going to be limited to what you'll be reimbursement on. You know, again, the state also looks at the 8-year enrollment projections, not 60-year use. So we want to make sure that we're not building for, and Mr. Hansen was very helpful in terms of really honing in and saying, you know, you can build a bigger school, but you're not going to get reimbursement on it. So again, that was a second kind of point, Mr. Asa, on reducing it a little bit to what it is right now for that portion. But again, happy to hear everyone's input on it. But there were a couple of factors that led us to reducing from the 18 to the 15. So bigger than what we're kind of seeing right now in terms of what the sections are, but not taking it, keeping it at that 18 and kind of split the baby and went to the middle. And if the facilities committee has any other input, that's kind of where we landed in terms of bringing it to you all for your input.
Mr. Krasnoff.
Those are both perfect segues, and also Nick to help you a little bit. We did have some questions about some of the projections. We did want some clarity. That I think that's part of the reason we were gonna have them here. But in our discussions, we kind of have to do what maybe the state will approve, and we felt that we would have to bring to the board something that was fiscally responsible that we could argue with the state. In the thought process, we were thinking the younger classrooms typically have bathrooms. So it was a benefit keeping those versus the older classrooms so that we could have the bathrooms, a little bit more flexibility there. So that was just kind of all our thought process and going about why we eliminated the older grades. And we didn't want to eliminate all of them because it wouldn't give us any extra space.
I'm sorry, Mr. Race, did you have more commentary?
Yeah, Mrs. Jacobson kind of hit on what I wanted to follow up with regarding the reimbursement. So understanding how that works, and maybe a question for Mr. Hansen, and more for the public too, with regard to the size and scope, knowing that state reimbursements are based on projections, obviously, of number of heads in the building. Just to be clear, though, if we were to if we want to use the term overbuild this school now for the future, we would not be risking the reimbursement that we would be eligible for on a normal basis, correct? It would really be the state saying, we're going to reimburse you on this much because this is what is reimbursable, but it wouldn't affect that, or would we be jeopardizing all reimbursement if we weren't compliant?
That is correct, Mr. Asa. Meaning you would get the reimbursement on the eligible square footage, but not get the reimbursement on, and Mr. Papa George, jump in if I'm wrong, whatever the proportion of the building that was oversized, so to speak, based on the 8-year enrollment.
I think it's also worth noting, though, that given the history of the district, the possibility that of redistricting, maybe moving more kids, as we've talked exclusively about and extensively with then SLAM, now M&P, it's a wheel, and moving kids around, that there could be some kids that potentially could end up at the new Dwight to relieve.
Yeah, so that's not something that we talked about in terms of justification for this project. And I'm not sure that the other boards would hear that claim, but that would be up to them. I just wanted to be clear, that's not a part of the justification for the project. In fact, we reduced sections, actually.
Yeah, my last comment was just on page 21 with regard to the storage space. I appreciate the effort to put in a category of storage, that it continues to be a problem at all of our schools. So making sure that we have as much of that storage space as we can, even if we don't get any reimbursement on extra square feet of storage, it's worth the investment in my mind. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Going on what Ms. Ace is saying, what his final comment, I wanna also just remind everyone that this town and this board especially has never looked at reimbursement rates when it came to building schools, right? We wanna make sure what we have is the right school for today and for what we see down the line, like Ms. Jacobson said, 50 years down the line, right? We wanna, and what we're seeing and hearing from central office is the school and the classrooms itself fit what we think the next 10 years will bring. And if it somehow changes, we've made the classrooms interchangeable, which I don't think has been done in the past, where today could be an OT PT room, but then we may not need it. It goes back to a traditional classroom or so on and so forth. So I think this one is definitely a lot newer, especially what I've been used to. We've always built the buildings, we've always built the music room and this, that. This one is, we got the rooms for what we need, what we think is gonna happen in 10 years. And if it changes, you can change them back and it fits to what the next 10 years after that's gonna be, so.
Mr. Krasnoff?
I just had one more quick comment on overall. These kind of specs are fairly similar what you also see, whether it's residential, commercial. This is what a lot of people like to work with starting. Obviously more detail gets added as you go through a project, but this is fairly standard today.
Can I point out some of the areas of other discussion that we had, if that's okay? On the ECC part, there's some square footage, and if we want to turn to those pages, which starts
On page 21.
Thank you, page 21. Yes. So in the ECC part, I'm just gonna point out, just to be explicit with the board and transparent, the spaces that are in here that were not in our long-range facilities plan, just so the board is aware. The multi-purpose room, and a separate faculty lounge, a separate main office, those three areas. So that's, the multi-purpose room is 1,100 square feet, the faculty lounge is 450 square feet, and the separate main office for the ECC entrance is 600 square feet, just to give you an idea of the square footage that came. So if anyone has any thoughts around those things, I would be eager to hear them. We could discuss them, they have been left in here, they were asked for by the administration to have swing space for the ECC. I suggested that the faculty lounge for the main building could be shared. But it's in here as it is right now. I just wanted to bring those three items to your attention.
Well, I guess Mr. Testani or Mr. Papageorge, you want to talk about those items?
Well, we talked about, depending on how the building was designed by the architect, you know, at that point, we could provide more guidance in terms if they could design it where the faculty lounge was accessible easily by both groups of staff members, then sure, that could happen. But, you know, the ECC's here and, you know, their faculty lounge for the building is all the way at the other end. By the time they walk down, their prep period's over, they're just gonna have to turn around and go back, so. We talked extensively, and Mr. Hanson mentioned, you know, that's a lot of stuff that would go into the design when an architectural firm was gonna put, you know, pencil, whatever they do now to paper. But those are things that could be altered in the design phase.
I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention since it's not in our long-range facility plan and make sure everyone was clear that those additional spaces had been added to the spec. The other area is the size of the gym is proposed in here as 4,700 square feet. For an elementary school, in my time in history, that seems on the larger side, but I will let administration speak to that in terms of why they want it to be that size and where it sits within all of the elementary schools. They did go and look at every single elementary school in terms of their size, and they are not the same size, but I'll let Mr. Papageorge speak to the size of the gym, which is currently in here at 4,700 square feet, which is a full kind of regulation size, but no
Regulation court size,
Yes.
no bleachers or
No,
anything
no,
around it.
yeah, no, what do you call it, fan space around that or anything like that. So that might be an area that the building committee at some point wants to look at and partnering with Parks and Rec, you know, if they want to make a change to it, but the gym size is something that I also wanted to bring to everyone's attention.
We did bring up, as you mentioned, all the elementary school gyms. We brought up the sizes and compared them to the 47, and 47,000 square feet puts us right in line with where the other gyms in our elementary schools are. It's not larger, it's not smaller, it's right kind of in the middle of where we land right now. So that's why we stayed with the 47.
Ms. Maxine.
I haven't been perhaps in the gyms recently of all of our elementary schools. How many of them have 2 long baskets and 4 side baskets with space for a divider curtain for 2 full basketball courts?
I'd have to look, but I don't think any of our elementary has divided.
You just said this was in the middle, so that means there's something bigger and something smaller.
We do have some that are slightly bigger and we have some that are.
What elementary school has a gym like that?
McKinley has.
Holland Hill, Mill Hill, I believe.
Mill Hill one I haven't seen. That's what I was wondering, if these are gyms I just haven't seen.
I believe, I know Holland Hill has because we got we went from the curtain instead of the old fashioned walls. I believe, and I could be wrong, Mill Hill has the curtain. I don't know if it's used as that way, right?
Have a divider.
Mill Hill does have a divider.
Mr. Lee, you'll remind me, I don't think we changed the footprint of the gym at Holland Hill during the renovation. It got a new roof and a new floor, but I don't think.
A new roof, new floor, and stage area, platform.
But the court itself is the
Court
same.
itself is the same size, but I believe it was a full court with everything at the time. But I know Mill Hill, we put the actual platform in the gym with the new floor and everything, and that wasn't expanded, I don't believe.
Talked about the larger gym with the curtain so that the ECC can access half while the elementary was using the other half as well.
But the ECC has PE space of its own.
Well, we put an indoor all-purpose area just in case, especially for when they can't go outside and access the playground, on different occasions like that, more so than for gym, so to speak.
Dr. Kelly, you're done?
Oh, I got many more, but
Well, Mrs. Gertie will move on to for now.
I just have a question about this gym space. So at the schools, elementary schools now, there are some schools that their largest space can't accommodate a cultural program where everyone would be like sitting in whatever the gym or the APR of their largest space. Does this plan accommodate that, including the ECC students, if everyone came together for one, that they would have the space to do that? Thank you.
Another one that's really big is Burr. Burr has a large gym, very large gym.
That's true.
So that was just another area, was the gym space. And then lastly, I'll highlight for the K-5 space, there is a developmental guidance office of 225 square feet. That is not in the long-range facilities plan and not in obviously any other elementary school. This is a forward-thinking item, and I would refer to Mr. Testani to speak to this item.
So I think we're kind of coming full circle in terms of the last 30 years where school counselors were prevalent back in the mid-90s, late 90s in elementary schools. We're talking a lot now about SEL. We're always looking for programs, and I think there's all these programs out there that are hit or miss. They're expected to be implemented by classroom teachers. It's inconsistent, and I think as we look into the future, my goal, hopefully at some point, depending on budget funds and constraints, would be at some point to start looking to bring school counselors back into our elementary schools to actually do that SEL developmental guidance type work that used to happen many, many years ago when I first started. That was much more effective and consistent throughout the buildings, rather than programs that come and go. I think we need dedicated staff that have the expertise and the time dedicated to go into classrooms and do those whole class instructional lessons and group discussions.
So that kind of covers the ad areas. I'll quickly go over the cut areas. And then, of course, we're happy to go page by page if everyone would like to. There was a multi-language learner room for 450 square feet that we took out and combined that with the world language room. That's a full-size classroom. A lot of schools do double up rooms for different purposes, like STEAM with gifted or, Spanish with something else. So we thought that would be an area where those spaces could be combined and shared. So that's for your consideration as well. Maybe it's not the right combination. We did pair it though with the world language room to be used for double purposes. We reduced a small breakout room of 125 square feet, given just we felt there was additional spaces being in here for resource rooms. So we felt that was 125 square feet that we could reduce by. Mr. Asa already brought up, we reduced 3 general ed classrooms, which cut 2,700 square feet. And there was a 100 square feet technical edit to the cafeteria space. That was just a technical edit, bringing that down. So that brought us to the 3,375 square feet that we reduced by. So giving you all some of the adds that we've added and some of the reductions that we've added. Everything else was pretty much edit using Fairfield language. And that was pretty much it. The only thing that I will say, some of the less interesting parts are in some of the details. You will see that every classroom, there were some spaces that had carpeting as the floor material, and we have pulled that out. Just knowing how carpeting goes in terms of allergens or soaking in things we don't want to soak in. That's all been replaced with tile, so that was a big change. We're taking our flooring out of the carpet realm. There'll still be carpet where appropriate, like area rugs for cozy things and book reading and things like that, but generally speaking, not having any carpeting as our flooring anymore.
Is it in the library though?
We took, it's still in the library, but like there was a lot of other spaces that administrative offices or, different spaces had carpeting as the material, and we pulled all that out. But just kind of one of the technical things that may be less interesting to some people, but we wanted to pull those out. So with that, Mr. Peterson, I leave it to you. How you?
It's not this interesting. We've had major projects, and we've had I think we pulled up the carpet in the McKinley office a couple years ago, right, for this. So anyway.
Anyway, I wanted to highlight the carpet. So as you wish to proceed, if you want to go page by page with questions, happy for comments or feedback.
Where does everyone stand with this? Do we need to go through this page by page? I know that this is it's not a first read, but I will talk a little bit about schedule. Just your next meeting, I believe, is on the 9th.
Of April.
Which is a little weird because after our next meeting is on the 8th. So in any event, we have about 2 weeks to deliver commentary to be considered by your
It'd be great if you could do it now, if there's any.
I'm right.
Yeah.
The more we can put down now if there are issues. I mean, I found some typos that I think I would send to you.
Oh, perfect. That's perfect.
Does anyone have any more questions on it? If we're kind of at this point of the discussion, then I don't know if we need to go page by page, but Max and Kennelly?
I'm happy to get it started.
Okay.
First, just a general, number one, I just want to say thank you for this. I love the new format. I love the detail. It was a little overwhelming at first, so I'm very, very glad I picked up a hard copy. If I'd been trying to do this online, that would not have been fun. And it really helps to envision what is going in there. But that said, my first is the big question. I know that ultimately we're looking for ed specs of this level of detail. But it was also my understanding that the working group was looking for something to help guide them. And you have not met yet, right? Your meeting is next week or this week?
Tomorrow, we're having a kickoff meeting.
So
that will be followed, I'm told, by bi-weekly meetings.
So as part of that kickoff meeting, would you be able to ascertain exactly what, because this may change the facilities committee agenda if what they're looking for is like, I'm making this up because I'm not an architect person, but if what they're looking for is like a 2 or 3 pager on general space, estimates of square footage without this level of detail, I think it would be important. Well, certainly our facilities committee, because we want to be able to we don't want anything to hold up the work of that group. But the part of the point of the working group was, first of all, where the building is gonna go and therefore what kind of space it can have. I hate to think that, knowing that this is the 5th iteration of this, what a amazing amount of work that the 3 of you have done. But we are a little bit dependent on the results of that working group, because that determines our funding. So I'm not even sure where the question is in that. I acknowledge that point. But that was a concern I had.
I understand exactly what you're getting at, and if I can just kind of jump into where my understanding of the working group process is. I was gonna give an update about this later, but now is a perfectly good time for it. So tomorrow, so only last week was the contract with with Svials and Partners, the consultant, finalized. And that's when this kickoff meeting was scheduled. I'm gonna go tomorrow, Mr. Testani. I've asked Mr. Lee to crash it with me, just because I anticipate that he'll be my liaison to that group. Hopefully we can tag team that. But I have not gotten a specific request from the consultant or from the working group yet. However, during the interview process, multiple of the interviewees brought up, have you done ed specs yet? And so kind of not having them, I don't think we would like to not have them. Obviously, the process is in a large number of ways out of our hands. And we'll see where it goes in the coming weeks. But I think that it's useful for me to be able to go into those meetings, go in tomorrow and say, we're working on this. Can you give me direction on what you need? And I don't even know, frankly, whether tomorrow is going to be that meeting to do that. Although it's an uppermost question in my mind.
Yeah.
That and getting a schedule kind of written in stone so that we know going forward that there's a specific cadence to the process. And the first selectman outlined several soft deadlines for the weeks ahead. So I know that there is a very broad sense of how and when the working group is going to do its work, and start with a lot of site work on Dwight property. So it's hard because we will know more in a couple of weeks than we know now. But I'm happy to have this work at least in this stage of process, because earlier in the process it was expected that we would be working on it. If all of that jumble makes any sense.
It does. So tomorrow you might have great information, but otherwise, if you don't meet again for 2 weeks, it might be a sudden kind of curveball at the facilities committee. Hey, we need you to, this is what they need. And I assume it would be this if they ask for something different, because obviously if they need something that gives them an approximate idea of what was approved from the long range facilities plan, then this is in a form that I think could give them enough guidance. But if they're looking for something much more.
And I, Mr. Papageorge?
So at this phase, this is a kickoff meeting tomorrow, so it's gonna review the scope. I think, and they do have the draft because they pulled it up. When I spoke with them, they told me they had already pulled up the backup for the meeting. And I told them that was a draft and it wasn't by the board yet. But really, the first steps of what they need is they need to know what type of size of building are we looking at, how many students. So this kind of lays it out for them, and it tells them the extra rooms that they wouldn't think of, like the speech and language room. So this gives them a general broad area of what they're looking at when they start to dig in and look at property as to what they could do there and what the whole project could look like. As we get down the road more and they say, yes, we can do this or we can't do that, that's when the details of the ed specs will come in, because they may come back and say, we can do this, but we would ask that the ed specs be altered to whatever, which would have to come before you for a vote prior to any alteration to the ed spec. So it's just, this, I believe, is a starting point for them, which will let them get started and push through. That's our big push, is let's get them started, let's get them on site, let's get them looking at all the details, all the stuff that we've done to date with our other consultants, so that we can get them up and running and moving along.
Can I follow up? Sure. So for a quick summary, the last 2 pages I think is really super helpful. If somebody needed a quick reference guide, because it's just like the inventory with the square foot with each of the states. So that's like a really quick 2-pager. But I also want to caution us that, there's a process involved in terms of the board being responsible for approving ed specs on the building that they think that the district needs for now and in the future, versus a working group dictating to us what our ed spec should be. So, chicken egg. But at the end of the day, I think it's our responsibility to put forth what the board thinks is what the district needs in terms of the educational components for the district. And then obviously it is up to the other boards to come back. It wouldn't be the first time we had to change something after the fact. But I'm not sure that we're in a place, to your point, of are we reacting to what they want versus what we have a responsibility to vote on and put forward to the board. So I think that our philosophy thus far is being mindful of everything and knowing the costs and the square footage and what's really needed, that pull between today and 60 years, but not necessarily waiting for someone else to say, well, we're only going to give you this, so go fix it. Do you know what I mean? So that is a, just to throw out what the philosophy has been.
Right, and I, excuse me, I understand that, but what's very unique about this project is we're literally talking about a different site. And so I understand, like, that to me, this is, I get the chicken or the egg. We should ask for what we want and what we need and what we've identified as a need. On the other hand, it would be foolhardy of us and short-sighted to not acknowledge that $30-40 million difference we may need to.
30-40. Please, you gotta stop putting out misinformation.
David, we've seen numbers that went from 45 to 65, and I also remind you that about 2 years ago, 2 years, I have the floor, Mr. Krasnoff. I have the floor. You can keep trying to talk over me. I will just keep going. When we were looking at this about a year ago,
I'm just sick of using.
about a year and a half ago, you were claiming that when we said it was a $35 million project, that was garbage and we could do it for 25 million. You said that as a candidate, Mr. Krasnoff. Now that,
All right.
quote, now the latest numbers we've gotten a $45 million number, we've gotten a $65 million number. We've talked about 2 different locations. We've talked about trailers. We're talking about having to redo in their entirety Parks and Rec fields. This is a lot of money involved that for 240 Dwight kids at the moment. So I'm just trying.
Mr. Krasnoff, I understand your point. Crosstalk is.
You don't even know the numbers.
Neither do you.
The whole point of the whole point of the working group.
Nelly, I'm gonna use the gavel. Part of the working group process, I think we can all acknowledge, is trying.
Stop muttering. I want you to try listening respectfully.
Trying to get better numbers. We will hopefully get better numbers through this process, through our kind of interface with the consultants as the project goes forward, as we see if there are any limitations on the site. Well, we don't know yet what the borings are going to show us. We're still in a kind of information fog right now, and we're trying to get better information. So I want to throw out that, like, this is the process that we're in. And I think that we need to operate within the process as much as we can. There are going to be questions, and a lot of them are going to be about cost. And I'm not sure that it's useful to hypothesize about it right now, but just have an awareness that that's where the project is going. And it's one of the main purposes of the working group is to get better numbers on cost.
So back to the agenda,
Okay, so I have the floor right now,
that's what I was.
and I'm trying to go through it. And that's why I was raising the issue of concern about what the working group needs from us so that we don't have delays down the road, and that needing to be realistic and needing to pivot. And whether you want to come at it with the chicken or egg analogy, which I don't think is a bad analogy, I think that works. We are talking about millions of dollars in difference between 2 potential projects, a few versions of. So that was my only concern. I don't see how we can vote. I'll never mind for that, because that doesn't help with this. But so in going over this, I have a lot of comments on all of the pages. So I'll try to go somewhat. I was wondering on page 4, how much of this represents a different, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, how much of this represents a different approach from what we've done, say, most recently with Mill Hill and Holland Hill? When we talk about, for example, up in the first paragraph, and this is where, please, I totally acknowledge, I'm not the expert at this kind of ed spec language, that this type of aspirational language may not be considered binding to the work of a building committee. To me, when I see words like must and all, I take those as binding, as this is what we're saying you must have, and that's where I could be wrong, and I would appreciate being, redirected on that. The first paragraph with the living environment must all accommodate space for multiple adults. All instructional classrooms will have all of these things. Equally important is wall space to post anchor charts, and I'm not criticizing the ideas of what need to be in our classrooms. But again, with language like this, I'm wondering how binding this is. The idea of, I'm not sure what is meant by the second paragraph, the technology support integrated throughout the learning environments. I'm not sure what that is. Allowing for this flexibility of space as with K-5 classes in the library media. Again, just a lot of this, I was concerned, how binding is this to a building committee? Consideration being given to student traffic that will result from the academic arrangement. The 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, each of these rooms will be located within the academic area of the building. Again, if we end up working with some kind of tight space, that again was really binding language. I mean, Mr. Testani mentioned before that idea of, it'd be great, I love your idea that they could share a faculty lounge, but if it doesn't work, we may need two, and that we don't need people crossing the entire building. I didn't know that we were stipulating that the kindergarten play area, that it would have its own kindergarten play area. For example, that's in the 5th one. And I, again, could have missed this. I don't know if that's something we've been focused on in recent projects. So this is, all right, so that was just page 4.
Well, maybe can we pitch that to Mr. Hanson?
Sure.
He may have a perspective on that type of language in the document. How binding that might be. Did you hear that question, Mr. Hanson?
Yes, I did hear the question, and I don't believe the language is binding. It's especially in this particular narrative, the first part of the ed specs is describing the nature of the spaces that you're envisioning and what would be the ideal. Clearly, it's when the architects use this document that they will work with the district to say, okay, how feasible is this given the design opportunity? And that's where the negotiation occurs. They say, well, it's not going to be possible to have all of the specials in a particular area. And I've sat through those meetings with architects and staff, and this begins the conversation on how to design the space that meets the needs of the district.
So as a, for example, follow-up question, Mr. Hanson, so when this says something like must, each must include, that's simply descriptive in nature, and really what they're deferring to would be all of the charts?
I'm not sure what you mean by charts.
So on page 4, there's
Yes.
language like this must, all will, this is integrated, this must allow for, each of these rooms will be, that's very definitive language. And again, I plead that this is one of the few things I was on a Warde roof building committee, but that's the only type of building committee I've been on. I read language like that as being a charge. And you're telling me that a building committee would not read words like that in that manner. Like these don't sound like suggestions. That's what I'm trying to say.
They are suggestions. So I will take the board's directive if the language needs to be revised. But this is typical for the kind of language I've used, which basically the intent of it is to describe what the intent of the use of the space is hoped to be. And I've never seen a situation where an architect feels like there's no wiggle room in saying, well, this is not going to be feasible. You know, the example, given like anchor charts, I've seen schools that have had beautiful spaces designed and there's no wall space. They have beautiful windows and there's no wall space to hang important things that teachers need to have on display. So that's a problem, and the architects need to understand that. Otherwise, they wouldn't know that. So that's the intent of this. I'm sorry, my dogs are contributing.
No, as I said, that's all I would hate if someone can't, the architect can't satisfy must language and then it has to come back to us for a vote. That's all I'm trying to bring up is something like every classroom is going to have computers. That sounds like I'll just leave it there. So your assurance is that if an architect isn't meeting this is not coming back to the Board of Ed for another ed specs revote because they can't give us what matched our vision. Correct?
It should not.
Okay.
If the architect feels or the board feels that, when the architect gets involved and there needs to be changes to the ed specs and normally that's usually due to budget that will affect the ed specs significantly, then it must come back to the board for the board's approval for those adjustments to the ed specs.
Okay.
Next, Kennelly, on page 5, the opening paragraph, unless otherwise noted, the standard furnishings in terms of the technology.
Wait, hold on, got it. Wait, say that again?
So on page 5, unless otherwise noted, the standard furnishings in every classroom, it does have like insulation for soundproofing, wireless internet connection for at least 30 devices, multiple electrical outlets, a sound telephone. So some of the technology that you're referencing that you weren't sure what that meant is contained here and then in each of the details.
Got it. Thank you. Actually, on that list though, a couple of questions. Is it standard that we have soundproofing in our, I'm not objecting to it, I was just curious. Is that standard for elementary school construction?
Yes, I'm sorry, you didn't ask me the question.
I just throw it out. Whoever knows the answer, I'm fine. And sound field system, what is that?
If I'm not mistaken, it's the speakers that are in the rooms, right? Along with your telephone that's by the door or the emergency, I could be very wrong.
It's an amplification system for students who are hearing impaired to help them hear what is going on in the class more clearly.
So
it goes into it is something that is built into newer classrooms these days.
Okay. I was wondering when it came to the kindergarten, what is the sensory area that's being built into all of the rooms?
I'll let.
I don't know to whom to direct these.
Dr. George?
So this sensory was something that, I missed the question. I'm sorry.
So I'm bottom of page 5, the sensory area that is part of the kindergarten classrooms.
It's the play-based learning space.
In student furniture.
What page?
Page
5.
Near the bottom of page 5. Tables, flexible seating, sensory area.
It's just an area of the room for kids to do sensory activities. For them to, whether that's occupational therapy activities, to help them regulate their behavior.
Okay.
I can jump on, piggyback something. When you mentioned the Holland Hill and the Mill Hill, what's different is, I think with this school now, it's more adapted. I mean, when we did Holland Hill and Mill Hill, we didn't think about sensory rooms, cool down spaces, right? It was just whatever was going. These are the changes that we see now that are popping up in schools in the district and now are added into classrooms now, such as a sensory area or cool down room or things like that. That back then, they were never on any ed spec sheet when I did Holland Hill and Mill Hill.
So that's what I was wondering is if it was fulfilling, because I know later there is a dedicated
Correct.
sensory room, but this way the kindergartners aren't out there by themselves.
Correct, and then to piggyback on what you're saying, the must and the will, I think at the end of the day, when they come back to us and say, we have your ed specs here, but based on space, we can't extend the gym this, we can do this, or we can't have a separate, you can have all this, but the one thing you may lose is that teacher's lounge, or if you keep the teacher's lounge, you may lose this classroom, and that's where you start cutting up the puzzle and moving things around and saying, well, we missed 3 classrooms because of the teacher's lounge comes out, 3 classrooms go in. So it's not necessarily, it's like you said, when we come back and they said, this is where we're gonna do it, at least this gives us that little blueprint to say, okay, we can go start from here. And then what can be done on top of that? And that's when everything starts moving around and all those.
Yeah, again, I fully understand that there has always been some flexibility in the work of the building committee. But at some point, sometimes it does have to come back to us for revotes. And it'd be, what I was unclear on was how much of this would prompt that? You know, how much of, we can't satisfy this must, this each, and this all. Now you've got to vote on it again. And obviously that's gonna be time lost between the building committee meeting, figuring that out, needing to come back to us, waiting to get on our agenda. And I was just simply looking to prevent that from happening, that once we start this, it's go.
I have a follow-up to that.
Can we just, she's got a lot more questions, I think, right?
I do. And look, I'm trying to do what Mrs. Jacobson asked for.
So
I mean, you guys know all this. You're the ones asking for the feedback. I'm just trying, that's all. On the grades 1 and 2, do we normally have toilets in grade 2 classrooms?
Not unheard of, but some of them do, some of them don't. Holland Hill and Mill Hill do.
And again, this is some of these are newer for me, so that's where I'm just asking. And then the sensory area here too. One thing that it came up again and again and again, so this, once again, Mr. Hanson might say, oh, that's standard language. The toilets on grades 3, 4, and 5, and then it's repeated on a lot of the subsequent ones, that they're located within close proximity to the classrooms. That line is repeated constantly, and obviously we can't have that many bathrooms. And I also, and maybe I missed this, I don't recall seeing any reference to gang bathrooms.
Okay, so good question. I asked the same exact question. What is not in ed specs, and I asked this, that comes out in the schematic design phase, is the corridor hallway space and the bathrooms. So both adult and student. So the ones that are not in classrooms come in that schematic design phase by the architects, when they're doing, the corridor.
We don't need to tell them that we need bathrooms.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I asked the exact same question, not only for student bathrooms for the upper grades, but for where the adult bathrooms, because we did hear from a lot of administrators that our bathrooms in some of our older buildings for the adults are not in ideal locations either. So being mindful of that, bathrooms were definitely on my mind, but that comes later on in the design phase when they're doing the hallways and all that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I was wondering about that. All right, so then I had several toilet questions. So I can, that's, some of this gets cut down. The grades on page 7, the student storage, now this might be exactly what you're talking about, the schematic design. Is the idea that all of these lockers are in the classroom? Because many of our schools have them in the hallways. Does this indicate it has to be one or the other? Okay.
Mr. Hanson can answer that if you would like to, but not from my understanding. It did not indicate if they were in the classroom or not.
They're intended to be in the hallways for the purpose of increasing space and storage cabinets and whatnot within the classroom.
The last two.
No, that's what I agree with. So this was sounding like it was trying to be put in the classroom, and that would take up a good bit of space. So that's why I was wondering. So this is just an allocation of these classrooms need dedicated lockers.
So it says are located in the corridors. Does that help you?
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. And then I'm glad you already addressed it, but down at the bottom of page 7, the 900 square feet each. So that's where I it had sounded to me like you were having an MLL and a world language room, each 900.
So that's an edit that would And that would come out, the each would come out.
Okay, and how would that work for world language? I thought that was a push-in special, so I was unclear on why they needed anything dedicated as a classroom.
Well, the ML was more the case. I mean, we double labeled it, but pulling kids out for services had to go somewhere.
Our schools now do, some of them do
Yeah.
have this dedicated world language classroom. It's just a matter of how the administrator has allocated their spaces to,
Is that usually because they just have an extra room?
They have the ability to.
Some of our schools don't have enough small spaces to have a dedicated MLL room, because they're deficient, and so the newer renovated might have the small space for an MLL room, but our older buildings are using full-size classrooms to meet the ed spec needs. Again, we threw it together with world language. It seemed like a natural pairing, knowing that they only get it once every 6 days. Would there be time that if it doesn't work from the administrative standpoint, we could pair it with something else, or however that pans out, but definitely,
I just didn't think we had it as a pullout. I didn't think world language was a pullout. I thought it was a push in and therefore it didn't need space at all.
Depends what building you're in.
Okay, and then also I didn't think we had that many MLL students so that we would really be needing a 900 square foot classroom for that.
It was more for the Spanish. It was more for that, but it could be also used as. We double labeled it, but that could be potentially something that gets negotiated as we get into the later stages, this with the building committee and the architect.
I think it would be important for us to have a room in here dedicated for something, because then we would be without that space.
Oh, no, I definitely agree MLL. I was the 900 square feet and then the word each as two separate things that threw me.
MLL room that we cut was 450 square feet.
We cut that and just combined everything into one room.
Alright, well, I'll just throw out as a suggestion. It just seems like more space than they need, but then you may have a vision for first of all, I also respected, I think Mrs. Jacobson raised the point that maybe that's how it's going to get used, but also if suddenly we want to put a third CLC, that might be something that gets moved around. So I that's what I wasn't sure if that was an idea behind that specific number.
So I would be interested in hearing from other members of the board, like, do you want the world language to go down to 450 and make it a small space versus a full-size classroom? Or however, I feel like I hear your point. Other schools push in, some have a dedicated room. So it's a matter of, and we can also talk to the principal and the administration again, but it would be helpful for me, Mr. Peterson, if anyone else shares this question at least, or if they're comfortable with the way that it is, because it was definitely something that we talked about extensively, these two spaces versus one. So happy that it's coming back to the board.
I mean, if you're okay with this, I'm happy to kind of poll the board.
Sure.
Does anyone have a specific comment on the MLL World Language Organization? Oh, Ms. Kersey?
I was just gonna say, I like holding classrooms as full-size classrooms because it just allows us so much more flexibility, so I would defer to that in many cases.
I'll second that. I was gonna say that exact thing. It's the same size as the full-size classrooms. It's useful to have that as a kind of modular space.
I also think we talked about it in committee that if you make it 900 square feet instead of 450, in case something 15 years, 10 years down the line, it becomes it's a classroom, have that classroom, right? There's no things changed, but the things we learned from the other projects is let's have that space that you could split up instead of those individual.
Mr. Shastani, isn't this an issue with McKinley? We have a lot of like kind of 3/4 size spaces.
Yes.
If more useful with the current enrollment if they were full-size spaces?
That could have been designed a little bit better to capture more space for those to be classrooms and not just early literacy
It
academy.
was designed a little more rigidly than has been proven.
And there's no way to even maneuver it to make it useful other than for what we're using it for, and we could use more classrooms there.
No, but I appreciate the nod to be really looking at every square foot and what makes sense and what doesn't, because we definitely tried to do that as well and cutting as much as we thought before bringing it to you all for feedback, so.
Well, on the MLL issue, do you feel like you have some guidance?
Yes, I think people seem to be okay with it for at this point, the way that it is at this point.
Ms. McNichol, you still have the floor for other questions.
Okay, if anyone has questions, I'm up on page 10 at this point, so I don't know if anybody else had anything up to page 10. Okay, so on page 10, minor detail, but do we usually put sinks, water, the whole idea of the water fountains, I'm calling water fountain, water fill, inside the gym as opposed to right outside? I just picture with elementary school, you're asking for water on the floor, which means you're asking for kids to slip and fall.
I believe Holland
This
Hill,
one says specifically inside the gym.
I believe Holland Hill and Mill Hill have them inside. No?
But I believe we've located them directly right outside the.
Which absolutely makes sense. I just thought, especially because you are talking about a wooden floor, just a suggestion. I thought it'd be a bad idea.
So possibly changing that, Mr. Hanson, to recess drinking fountains, bottle fill stations located right outside the gymnasium? Are people more comfortable with that? I don't know what the practice is, Mr. Papa George, or what you prefer.
I would agree, I missed that, but it definitely should be outside.
Okay, so fill stations located adjacent to the gymnasium?
Outside.
Do you follow?
I was just wondering if it was like a supervisory issue.
I was just thinking, I mean, if it's strategically located inside the gym, and it's more of a fountain, rather than send a kid to go outside and then an elementary kid, we could.
Aren't the schools managing with that now? Because most of them have them outside?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, it's a wood floor, but it's not like the water's gonna sit there for enough time that it's gonna buckle. I mean, if it's.
I wasn't even on that part. I was at the kid that steps on that and just feet up.
Can I
Or
offer
adult.
that the consultants may have a perspective on
Yeah.
that? In terms of what's,
Yeah, what's-
recent projects?
There could be some matting under it or something that captures water. I don't know.
Okay,
I think it's.
we were asked for feedback.
Yeah.
That was
No,
something.
we'll bring it back.
It actually makes sense
We'll
too.
bring it back.
The architect may say outside.
We'll bring it back
I
to
mean,
be.
pipes running inside to the gym.
I mean, it would just be on the opposite side of the wall.
Okay.
Regarding the library media center, the media center studio and the tech lab, on the bottom of page 10, the media center workroom, is that the same thing as the studio?
Sorry, where are you, Jen?
The very bottom line of page 10?
Sink and media center workroom? That's on the bottom of my page.
Yes, so I don't know what the workroom, that's something that I didn't see someplace else.
So up on top, 2,700 square feet includes 200 square feet office for the media staff and 200 square feet workroom.
Okay, yes, obviously there are certain things I skipped right past.
That's
Why,
okay.
why do they need a sink?
I didn't realize the sink was part of that. I don't think
I don't understand why an office.
I don't think it was supposed to be there. I
Mr.
don't,
Hanson, any insight on the sink inside the media center workroom?
Page 10, bottom of page 10.
Oh, you're mute.
I think maybe it's a typo.
I didn't see something.
It is typically included in workrooms in media centers, but that's a district choice.
A
So
lot of sinks in this plant.
we can certainly eliminate it if that's the board's
Well, I'm just sharing topic for discussion. On the next page for access. Again, I was concerned about the centrally located in the school, although I completely agree with the idea, but again, I was worried about binding, but then the access to outdoor garden area, which,
Yeah, I didn't focus on these bullet points, but yeah, I mean,
Desirable, always desirable.
yeah, I just.
Again, that the word desirable is intentional there because it may not be possible. It's often requested to have that as an option if that works within the design, but it's clearly not a dictate.
And actually, to that point, one of the things again, not an expert, none of the classrooms indicate a second door. Is that just standard though, that this library, for example, would have a door leading to the outside, that all of those classrooms have a second door that leads to the outdoors, or is that not?
That's all dependent on the architect.
So that's not, but the point being, that's not a detail we have to include. Okay.
Correct.
And maybe I missed something under student furniture. We're gonna have a tech lab. What's the reason for the 6 student computers?
Talked about that. We talked about that and Mr. Tassani might have input. So computer lab could be when the whole class is in there taking their standardized testing or whatnot. But even during library time, when they're in the main library, students need sometimes to access a computer for something Mr. Tassani talked to. There's work that can be done on computers in the library that's not necessarily work when they're all in the computer lab. Looking things up, looking for a resource while they're just in library time.
So they're not, the point being, that's not, let me do some typing, play some games.
No. As part of the library media curriculum, it may be some activities that might be going on, or students like might pop in from another class while another class is in there and they're using, so just to have some stations in the actual library that's not a part of the computer lab for library work.
Okay, and the media center studio, is that just the part where they have the little raised stage, but it's in the library media center? Where they do their little presentations?
I should have added this to my list of areas that we talked extensively about was this media studio, but I'll let Mr. Lee go ahead.
A media studio basically is that studio that a lot of libraries are coming up, especially in schools now. It's actually like, almost like a podcast studio, a little production studio where kids can go in there and test their wares. If you go to the Westport Library, there's actually a huge media studio in there. It's popping up at other schools now just because of the change of the times. We all talked about that in great lengths. Is it something we would like to have? Yes. Is it something that we understand that may come out because of size or whatever? That too. But if we're talking about the change of times, we want to get it in, if possible, is something like that.
And a follow up to that, we also thought that the small space was good for like a small group meeting. A lot of times libraries have like a breakout room.
There would be room with all of this equipment?
Yeah, it wouldn't be really an equipment room per se. It would be a small space where
You would have like a big screen. It wouldn't be like a real true podcast kind of studio like you see now, but it would probably have like a little microphone, a little one screen and a little computer, little editing system, nothing too.
again, it was a wish list item if it gets eliminated. One thing about all of this, we try to design it so we could take the Dwight name off it and put almost any school for the future going forward. That was kind of our thought process behind the specs. Now, whether they're all gonna work for Dwight, maybe not. That was a lot of our thought process when we were developing this.
Yeah.
Changeable.
On the media studio, this is something that we talked about extensively a lot because it's not in any other ed specs. However, some schools are getting grants and they're making the maker space in a space and they're kind of like makeshifting this almost on their own so kids can do podcasts or the morning announcements or do little videos or whatever. So it is
Elementary school?
Yeah.
We clearly need some new tours.
Oh, I feel.
Jennings had
I apologize.
studio last year. Young man over there has a big podcast. Now he's at Woods, the geopolitical, and
Yeah.
it's
Okay, so it's a question.
pretty
of-
impressive.
This is one of those items like not in our ed specs from 20 years ago. Connected to the library media and providing those opportunities. You know, one of the items that were put in here about future school and what kids are doing and learning about. But again, this is an area of feedback for the board if you want to include it or not. So we did leave it in, but it was definitely like not anybody else's, but
You know, the one thing we talked about when we started getting into some of these smaller spaces and having these conversations, if you eliminate this 300 square feet, the building's not gonna get reduced 300 square feet. You're not taking a corner of the building off or coming in, 6 inches. All it is somewhere else is gonna be a larger space. Cause the footprint is still gonna be the footprint, unless you're starting to cut major square footage. This is gonna be in the interior somewhere, so the library media space will be just 300 square feet
It could
bigger.
end up being carved out of the 2,700 square feet of what's dedicated to the library. Correct.
Right, I mean, how
I
are
mean,
you?
that's what it says. It said, well,
Right.
In close proximity or within the library media center.
But if the library media is in, say, in the middle of the building, to get 300 square feet, you're just gonna come in 3 inches on the.
I got it.
Just,
That wasn't even the part, I just wanna know what it
No.
was. On the,
those are the things we talked about.
okay. On the computer lab, the built-in bookcases. Because this is another 900 square foot room, which is that at this point, Mr. Papa George, the standard size of our computer labs? Or is this kind of falling back again to the 900 as a standard?
Space standard.
That's what we did at Mill Hill and Holland Hill? And I was worried about the built-in bookcases, kind of like lockers, that it would take up needed space, or like what would the bookcases be for? Or is it just going back to Mr. Ace's point, it's never a bad idea to have storage?
Never a bad idea to have storage, plus when you start looking at design with the lockers set in on the hallway side, it kind of makes alcoves that you can put a built-in bookshelf into that's not intruding into the space of the classroom. So you have that little give there, and the space was not really usable, so by having them in there, you can use that as storage. As we all know, storage is very. I just walked the building yesterday and they said storage.
Okay, and then on the, okay, so that was it for the computer lab. For the general ed intervention services, for the next couple of, well, so I guess it's the next 3. None of these would be 1.0 in terms of staff, Mr. Testani, through the chair to Mr. Testani. So is it, or maybe to the committee. So we're looking at 2 different rooms for both reading and math, and then an SEL room, and then a developmental guidance office room. And then later with the other, the preschool, also all those little rooms. Don't any of these people share spaces?
Well, it's.
Cause we don't have any 1.0s.
Well, we do with reading and math.
1.0, so that's one of the things I wasn't positive
Yeah,
about.
so we
I
actually.
wasn't
with-
digging up the budget book.
Yeah, with literacy, we have the interventionist, we have the LAS, with math, MRT. So,
Okay.
yeah, those spaces would be great for small group instruction.
Most schools have these small spaces for dedicated to the MST and the LAS.
Okay.
Especially now with the accelerated math, you're gonna take out kids from the classroom as the math, and you gotta bring them somewhere. 600 square feet would be enough, since it's not a full class.
Right.
It's gonna be a portion of it.
I will say for the small spaces, Jen, old school, there was a lot more 0.25s.
Right.
And what we heard emphatically in our collection with administrators was less of those, still needed for certain things like social worker, psychologist, and speech, one-to-one work. That's important to have a few of those, but give us a little bit bigger so we could either have an individual student or we could do that 3 to 4 small group when we're bringing people together, because the 0.25s, you just can't get chairs in them. And so they become almost like really difficult to use to meet more kids' needs in an efficient way. So it did say if we could make those a little bit bigger, around that 500 square foot rather than the 225 or whatever, it would be much better for instruction where they could bring in multiple kids at the same time. So the 600 square feet is a little bit in those areas. Some schools for the MST, LAS might be a smaller space, but then it's a challenge to bring in small groups.
It wasn't even, now that you're discussing it, I'm noticing it, it wasn't even the 600 so much, it was each having their own space for that. And once again, we've got sinks. All of these rooms need sinks. Plumbing costs money, I don't know, is that our standard now?
General note, review sinks.
Okay, then I'll stop bringing it up, okay.
No, I think that's it, but it's also repairs. I mean, like,
Yeah.
We're talking about 60 years of school. Yeah.
We will review all the sinks.
The one thing I appreciated was that having it in, because that was a big thing years ago when we did the life-threatening food allergies. One of the big problems with that policy was the countless rooms that had no sinks in them. So I'm delighted to see this in the general ed classroom so that that's not an impediment anymore.
I think at one point, I even said if you put sinks in there, you can actually use it. Again, if things change, you can actually turn it into a classroom, whether it's a younger classroom or not, but I know the square footage
Yeah,
now.
this one was 600, so.
Yeah, so
Especially in the non-full-size classrooms.
Yes.
it shouldn't be in there.
Those were the ones, the full-size classrooms, I think it's great. And then I just wanted to question the SEL room. Noting that up through second grade, we've got sensory areas in all those rooms, and I always worry with this one that we have staff who can monitor a student who's there. It's one thing to have the space, it's another thing.
SEL rooms are a little bit different than sensory rooms. It is.
Well, those are sensory areas, so I'm just, but the idea of that sensory area that was just explained was it can be well, whatever.
It can help kids do some sensory activities or to do some behavioral regulation within the classroom.
Thank you, that was phrased much better.
The SDL rooms are for students who may need, a separate place to get themselves regulated again, prepared to learn in the classroom. So it may be students who are struggling and may need, to go to a separate place to calm down for whatever reason, struggling, so can get back into.
And who monitors that?
There would be an adult with them.
Where does that adult magically appear from, since everybody's assigned?
Take a child down there and spend a little time so the child calms down before they bring them back to the classroom. It wouldn't be a staff member that would man the room all day, so to speak.
No.
They're happening now. They're just.
What do you mean they are happening?
Like, schools have incorporated these rooms and.
I remember seeing the Jennings one.
In a space and have taken an existing space, and made them into that, so this.
Paras would normally take a child down there, or,
Or a school psych or a social worker who's working with the kid, who has a connection with the kid, can help the kid get back,
Assistant principal.
ready to go back into the class.
Okay. Again, I'm caught up on all of these close proximity things. So on the K-5 Developmental Guidance Office, close proximity to classrooms, we've got so many things that are in close proximity to each other. I'll just leave it at that. Complex.
I think part of it is like we learn from the other projects, like I don't remember it seeing close proximity on the other ed specs, I think, and then you put a room somewhere and then you realize, wow, it's really far from the bathroom and this and that. And I think it's just, again, the change in the times and it's just.
There's just a lot of things that are all intended to be in close proximity to blank and
Right.
so.
But eventually someone's not gonna,
Exactly.
gonna have to
So
walk.
I don't know if there's a way to designate who gets the, hike. I don't know.
Just to highlight something that Ms. Maximilian said, it should be complex learner cohort in that heading. So one of those,
Comlex.
on page 13, complex learner cohort.
missing a
It's that
In the,
right.
in the grade heading.
Yep.
There and on the next page,
I got
On
that.
the next page as well,
at the very top of page 14.
thank you.
Alright, so then I'd had some questions about all of these, the 225 space, the 450 space. So the intention is that these will all be separate carved out areas, even though, alright, so now I'm realizing I'm forgetting. Do we have a 1.0 psychologist, a 1.0 speech, a 1.0 OT, PT research, like are those? I had thought some of these might be able to be shared.
Possibly,
Space.
I mean, right now, we have no CLC there, Dwight, so if the CLC was moved there, we'd look at FTE based on hours and so, but it wouldn't be, even if it was a 0.6, they would need a room.
Right, but
There's gonna be
in
overlap.
previous buildings, we were having shared, like on Monday, Tuesday, this is I'm making this up.
Yeah.
This is the social worker space, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this is the psychologist space.
With a CLC there, you're gonna see overlap
Sure.
in services at the same.
Every
same-
school at this point has a dedicated space for social workers, psych and speech, yes?
Again, that's what I couldn't
No,
remember.
Good question.
Have to ask on page 16 and 17 that both our principal and assistant principal get private bathrooms.
Well, that is gonna be me saying that there should, if you're building a school or and this is, building a new school, there should be an admin bathroom. Correct.
One, I might agree with you, two,
Depends if they're near each other. If the offices are near each other, maybe there's a connecting but I'm just,
Okay. So I'm just moving on, just raising my questions. On the, I did have a question, given what we've been talking about with printers. So the main office secretary area has a copy room. And then okay, I forget where it was. Not the conference room, the teacher work room, right? No, that just has oh yes, and that has the copier. And then somewhere else, and I can't remember what it was, with reference to a copier, what was the intention with our elementary schools of now that we're centralizing or reducing the number of printers?
Have two.
So the entire building would have the two?
Well, there'd probably be one in the main office.
Right, so this main office secretary one, that.
Yep. And then for teachers to access, depending on how they would develop, they would design the building, we try to have two in different areas of the building to access.
So would that need to be put at a distance, not proximity to the main office, or
Close proximity to
proximity.
classroom area.
or however? It just, I was just trying to get what the count was gonna be.
Yeah.
I appreciated, by the way, on the food services cafeteria, the explanation of how you came up with 1,540 square feet. I very much appreciated those parentheses.
That's a good point. Let me talk about that for a second. There was a discussion, do we need to make, and I think this came up with, for your purposes as well. Are you making core facilities bigger for the pre-K? And the answer is no. We're not adding any lunch waves for pre-K. Gym's not being made any bigger for pre-K, not, like the core, the cafeteria, the APR, the library, none of that is being made bigger than the standard elementary space, given the size of the building and the number of students. So, and we had gone through this during Mill Hill too, when people were talking about the addition to Mill Hill. Well, do we need to increase the size of the core facilities if you add the 3 extra? And the answer is no, because those fit within the size of the building. So important purposes is pre-K is in here, especially for our full-time kids who will have access to lunch. They would just fit right into the rotation of the waves and not add an additional wave or anything else. So the vision for the pre-K space is that none of this is being made any bigger for pre-K or even the CLC.
We didn't want kids pre-K eating in the classrooms anymore. Just not, it's not good for our custodial staff. It's just not good overall to have kids eating in the classroom.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, they should just join in with the other lunch ways.
Mr. Krasnoff, just a quick follow-up. We also kept in mind that if for some reason the ECC was separated out, that we would need to pull those spaces over. So currently they're not in here, but if we were to do a separate.
Which spaces?
There's not a cafeteria or a gym or anything like that, but if we were to pull it over to a separate building, we would need those spaces to pull over too. So this is the combined. If we were to separate it out, there would, some of the combined spaces would have to come over.
He's talking about like not necessarily Mona Terrace, but Barberry Terrace or whatever, right? One of the sites where you don't have any of these things, the core facilities built.
Okay. I'm not gonna, some of this I'm gonna try to skip past, and some of it you've now answered.
Skip past anything.
I was circling a few more toilet references. I
have general review.
That's why I'm skipping it.
Toilets and sinks.
And close proximities.
Well, and again, I'll stress that this is not a first read.
Right.
So this is gonna come back before us, before a vote in any event.
Right, but better to say it ahead of time than at first read time.
But if anyone catches something further down the line, there will be other opportunities.
And so then on page 22, and I think you've kind of answered it at this point, the multipurpose classroom, because I know what that room looks like up at Warde. So, but you're saying this would not be intended as the PE site, that they would be intended to be in the Dwight gym? This is really more for
wherever possible, yeah, and given the fact that we're gonna have full day preschool there. And depending on how staff allocation would be for PE, you could have, kids in the multi-purpose room as well as in the gym from pre-K. You don't wanna just limit, because depending on this staff allocation, so just to have this extra room, and then let's be honest, these kids have to be out there playing. They have to be moving. We want them moving. Can't go outside all the time, so. And then they wouldn't have access to the gym. It would be tough just having them in the classroom.
This is definitely something I would like to hear, Mr. Peterson, from the full board. This was a room that I struggled with very much, so knowing that we hadn't included it, I could kind of understand an admin office if that's the way that things were being set up and things like that. But knowing what things cost per square foot, it's 1,100 square feet. We do have a lot of additional spaces in terms that we're doing services and resource rooms and and we are doing a gym that has the curtain, so I did bring this up with the committee, and this was something that we definitely wanted to get feedback from the board on, because what the majority feel that it's important to have it and to keep it. I struggled with this room personally. It's a lot of square footage and it's an expensive room.
Yeah.
So
It's
I could just-
a good investment, given the fact that we hear a lot about how little kids are playing, especially in today's world with devices. And we need to get kids moving. We need to get them playing. I think the more play spaces we have, especially for our youngest learners, the more they're gonna benefit from this long term.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I did speak to preschool staff about this. It would be an opportunity for an indoor resource place in inclement weather, as Mr. Testani said. It would also be an opportunity to have open houses, to have, the preschool sing-alongs at holiday times and other presentations or large parent gatherings and meetings.
I would say though that those would not be reasons I would wanna add an 1,100 square foot room. If you make the academic argument that it's incorporated into the curriculum and movement, I get that, but if an open house site, I wouldn't be overly moved by.
We could have our art in there, our music classes in there, which are currently now taking place in our classrooms.
Jersey?
I was just gonna say, I hate sharing personal anecdotes, but when I was looking for preschool for my own children, I was looking for that space specifically because we're in New England and there needs to be a place for them to play on these cold days. So, I can't tell you how successful it was there. But I saw firsthand, that's my experience.
Does anyone have any other comments on the multi-purpose classroom? I mean, I'll just say that I'm happy to go with staff recommendation here. I do understand, and of course, as we evolve through the process, something to think about, but I see no reason not to ask for it at this stage of the game.
25, 30 years ago, I would have said something different, just because kids did play more. They went outside more. Parents allowed their kids to be outside more. We didn't have these things. Today, I think we need to provide that opportunity, because kids are losing that. We need to get back to them somehow. Taking devices is great. I think that's part of it, but I think we need to provide more play time, more social interaction time. And this provides that.
And the Stratfield ECC up until this year did have a full-size classroom that it was using for adaptive PE. It got lost as we added the additional classroom, but there is precedent in terms of our ECC spaces having a classroom that is flexibly used for movement purposes and things like that. So it just, for me, it was, is this an investment we want to keep in here for right now? To your point, it can always change. So I'm hearing yes at this point.
And also a fair point to Mrs. Guernsey said in terms of attracting peers. That's a good point. One thing that I think we would get a lot of pushback on is how none of the preschool smaller spaces are shared. And just, I'm not saying, I understand that when you're serving a third grader with the psychologist office, or the speech and language office, but the thought that that could possibly be in a part of the building where here's elementary school, here's ECC, here's that spot in the middle with those special areas, why couldn't they be shared?
I think that's something you'll have to talk to the architect, but there's only gonna be so many things that could be in the middle.
Right, no, I get, look, I'm not an architect, I'm just saying that that's something I can hear other town bodies saying, this seems inefficient.
Let me, it would be helpful possibly to talk to Mrs. Bruno and also Ms. Magui, because at Stratfield, they do have their own social worker psych and speech, the ECC, just because Stratfield is blessed with so many small spaces in that building. we could also see what's happening at Holland Hill and maybe just reach out to the administrators. Are those spaces empty? Would there be enough hours in the day, so to speak, to handle both populations in the same space?
Yep.
Do evaluations, to do the speech hours and all of that. With 128 possible pre-K students, a half of which at least probably have an IEP. I'm gonna guess it might be challenging, but I think it's a fair question to reach out to those administrators and say, are any of them sitting vacant for X number of hours a week that they could share or not? And it's a valid question to see, but I'll defer.
Yeah, look at, say, at least 15% of the Dwight 240 students will probably have an IEP. We'll have 24 CLC students in the building. And then percentage, if it's a 50-50 split of 124 EDC kids are gonna have an IEP.
A lot of hours.
It's a lot of hours that are just, it's not doable with just.
It's a fair question though.
It is a good question.
And I think Mrs. Jacobson is making the key point, is that when we have the data to back it up in terms of how busy the spaces will be, that's what will make the argument for us.
Have Kristen Brunel comment on some of your questions.
It would be great as a follow-up, because it's not something the committee can come up with on our own, just for our April 9th meeting. If we could get some feedback from Ms. Bruno and Ms. Magui in terms of the separate psychologist, social worker, speech, and are you including OTPCs?
No, I think that's, I get that one.
Okay, those three, from the Warde site, even from Holland Hill, you know, because they don't have their own dedicated, there's 2 full-time, just to get some feedback from those administrators in terms of how often those small spaces are being utilized versus challenges with them if they don't have it, because Holland Hill doesn't have their own, Stratfield does, Warde does, so just how is that
We
working?
definitely have more space at Stratfield than at Holland Hill. There's one.
I want to address Mrs. Maxon Canale's, if you don't have it, how does that work out versus the having it? And for Mrs. Magui and Mrs. Bruno is the dedicated ECC speech, psych, and social worker at ECC at Stratfield. How full are those in terms of hours? Are they there every day? Are they there half a day? Is every hour totally booked? We're looking for like some hard data in terms of hours of use on those rooms.
Not gonna have all the data because there's no CLC there.
Absolutely.
And
This is ECC though. I just wanted
right,
to.
and at Holland Hill, you only have 2 classes.
Understood.
So I think
We can only do what we have and getting some feedback on it. I hear what you're saying. Every site is unique, which is
the
challenging.
Warde site is probably comparable to then Stratfield would be probably the 2 comparisons.
Alternative question, if Mrs. Bruno didn't have those 3 side by side in tandem question, if they didn't have those 3 spaces at Stratfield for those services, where would they bring them?
I think in their first year, weren't we hearing stories about them trekking with their little legs up the stairs, and that was one of the things that was I don't remember which service it was for. I just remember the image of the little legs going up the stairs and.
The old office area.
Yeah, I think that was OTPT.
That was one of the concerns at our meeting, was the distance that they have to travel to get to that shared room could be a problem.
Valid question. I'm sure somebody else is gonna ask it, so might as well look into it now.
And out of curiosity, through the chair to Mr. Testani, does the CLC know that redistricting is gonna be happening with them?
Well, we've said it enough times that Mill Hill would get space back and we would move it to Dwight.
Okay.
That's the full intent.
I mean, obviously the group that is in, well, no, I mean, like if you're in kindergarten CLC at Mill Hill right now, you're going to be, the plan for this would be they are going to be redistricted.
They would go to the new site if they were still.
Right, I'm asking, do they know that?
I don't know if they've been officially told because there hasn't been a shovel in the ground yet, but once the project gets started,
And so whenever it comes to redistricting,
the parents will know that they will be moving. And I think
And I think
given the site, they would be excited, I would say.
And there's gonna be a multi-year runway before that happens, so.
And I think when Dwight was pulled out, the CLC was pulled out of Dwight, there was like no runway
what I.
It's like you're going to Mill Hill.
Yeah, and I am trying to argue that I think that's unfortunate because we make a big deal about the fact that the CLC is not an isolated standalone, that they get integrated as much as possible. They're as much part of that community as many of the other students, and in fact could be even more dependent on the relationships they've built. So
We
that's
would have to do some work with the students themselves in a transition.
Like we did when we moved to Mill Hill, but yeah, no, they've not officially been notified, parents or.
And again, we're
Yeah.
a little down the road. I just wanna throw out there that I would hate for this to become as we can't, what have we learned well is that we cannot assume anybody's paying any attention to us. So until it affects them.
I mean, Mill Hill is overcrowded because of them moving.
I'm not questioning that it might not be a good idea. I'm just asking if they know. On page 27. I had a question about the lighting. I don't remember I was pleased that up with the lighting system. And again, I know this is you have to do it anyway now, Mr. Professor, with the idea of the efficient and appropriate natural lighting. You know, that's obviously we need to not make maybe some of the mistaken judgments we made at Burr with where we got that natural lighting, but I'm glad to see that that's referenced. I put an exclamation point there. I thought I'd say that one. Down in the technology, and some of this just might be because this isn't what I called them, so I wanted to know what they were. The school shall have, second bullet point, the school shall have wall-mounted interactive LED devices in every classroom and meeting space.
So the Promethean boards, basically.
It's a Promethean board.
It's the interactive board.
So it's a whiteboard.
Well, but today's board.
But now it's called a Promethean board.
No, they get.
It's a new technology. It's a new technology.
The number of
They're actually
PD I've
cheaper
gotten
and-
on that and
yeah.
can't use.
Better, the teachers use them more so than smart boards.
So my question is though, is in every classroom and meeting space? That's a lot.
Well, I mean, when we go outfit it out, those could be flexible, I mean.
See, that's where I come back to the language in the beginning of the must and each and all, and so.
You know, once all the FF&E and all that stuff gets done.
Well, and also, it was nice, I know when we were talking about these 15 years ago, they were like 50,000 a piece.
They're not expensive anymore.
That doesn't mean, I'll just clarify for my own self too, follow up, that doesn't mean like in the small spaces.
So that's what I thought this included all.
Okay, so when I read all classrooms to mean the full size, so if you think that needs to be clarified in every full size, like it's not gonna be in the 225 square foot developmental guidance office, right? I mean.
Like the 600 square foot math? Or the
How did that?
450 foot that's what I'm.
Probably in the 600 square foot
Yeah,
space you
probably
would
in
have
the
it
600s.
For math, yeah.
for math, because they are gonna be teaching curriculum.
I'm just saying it's a lot of spaces, that's all. Okay, I'm raising my question.
Appropriate classroom and meeting spaces?
Sure, I like appropriate.
Sounds good.
Again, anything that then allows some judgment where it doesn't have to come back to us.
Appropriate
That's,
classrooms and meeting spaces.
love it.
Meeting space.
And the very next one, capacity to provide video streaming devices in every classroom and meeting space. What is that for? I immediately have a COVID flashback and I get hives.
Probably that you could plug in your laptop with an HDMI and be able to project. That's what I would guess. It's a stream.
So into every appropriate classroom and meeting space?
Where are you?
Third bullet point.
Yeah, cause that's where the plugs, like if you have a screen like that, you will plug in.
Okay,
In every appropriate
And
and.
it's like a plug, like if it's back against that wall, you're not plugging it into the TVs anymore, you're actually plugging it right into the wall.
my eyes are glazing over.
It's
It's just, I'm raising it, I toss it over to you.
Some of the meeting spaces they zoom from too now.
Yeah.
True.
IEP and stuff.
Yep. The flexible adaptable charging stations in every room. Is that the portable ones? And is this something we're definitely looking to do?
I thought it was
Yeah, I don't know
I
where.
don't know what that
That's
is.
the fourth bullet down?
Yeah, no, I know, we didn't
If anything, it'd be in the wall.
talk.
Are you talking about an outlet for a cart? Or what is that?
Mr. Hanson, can you provide some clarity on that for us?
We're on page 27 in the technology box. bullet 4.
Yes, I'm looking at that and I'll have to review that.
Okay. And then, again, these words that jump at me, the very next bullet point, multiple data drops, not positive what that is, with sufficient power in every classroom, meeting space, and closet to accommodate phones, copiers as needed. I just don't get what that is.
All internal workers, we worked with Marco from IT to establish what would be needed for, like you said, the drops for plugging in the broadcast on that wall, or for a teacher to be able to put something.
Drop.
A drop is what they call an IT drop, so everywhere you plug in.
Where you could put in Cat 5, Cat 6 cabling.
You can plug in your laptop to show off the screen.
I plug it into a little outlet. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So
that's a
That's an
drop.
outlet, that's a drop. There you go.
That's an outlet. Outlet.
Is power.
And then on the next page, 28, in the security section. So I'd also had, so never mind, I already asked about the exterior doors. Do we now stipulate in I don't remember the name of what they're called. They're like, I thought at the high schools they called them bulkheads or something, like the really big cement plant stands, which.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
We should talk about that off.
Okay.
Security.
I just wanted to, that,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's something we discussed offline.
Okay, I have to ask for the clocks, are we talking analog or digital?
I mean, these clocks.
We talked about that. We did talk about that.
So much.
I said it was should be.
They were digital.
I thought they were,
Analog.
went digital. We went digital.
You could make an amendment.
I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna ask you to reconsider analog, cause we know they're gonna learn how to use digital. They are stumped.
You want analog.
That's their excuse for having to pull out a phone when they're in the high school, because they're looking right at a clock, can't read.
Mr. Burns, you have a comment on that?
I agree, yes, please, analog, please.
All right, review all clocks.
They're teaching time in the classroom though.
Just
Tell the parents to teach it. As I said, I'm just giving you feedback.
Papa George, what do you got?
So just so you know, is one of the things that when this came up and Sal and I were reviewing that part of it, we had just come back from the safety and security show in New York. And one of the big pushes nowadays that they're selling is the clock, which is a digital clock, but they can also have preset messages. Like if the building goes into a lockdown, it's a silent message in the classroom. It says we are in a lockdown. So it just kind of gives another way of communication during.
And that little neon sign thing there couldn't be with an analog clock? It's a different piece. All right, I don't mean to belabor it, I just wanted to share that. The suspended acoustical ceilings and acoustical decks will be installed throughout the building.
Where are you?
I'm sorry, down in acoustics, second bullet. Is that something we are doing? Well, I'm just asking, is that something we do now in all of our buildings? Okay. And for the bus loading, okay, sorry, last page and then I am done. On page 29. Bus loading, well, I guess it's on, but the idea that the drive will have 2 lanes. Cause I know how tight and windy it's gonna be up there. Do the buses have to, or they can't just wait until everybody moves along? I don't mind looking at this audience.
You know, in terms of the traffic flow, that.
I get it with the cars, although that scares the bejesus out of me, cause cars just pull out and, I mean, here's some horror stories, but.
So two lanes is establishing 2 lanes, one for cars, one for buses. It
No,
doesn't-
this is in the bus loading areas, the drive will have 2 lanes. Like, why are we having,
For travel
I'm just asking, why are buses passing each other? Can't they come in, unload and move?
So yeah, we will look at that. Cause we don't, the last bus doesn't roll until everyone in front of it moves out first, so.
That's,
We'll definitely look at that.
okay. And then in the 4th to last paragraph is playgrounds will include paved play areas and then replacement multi-use fields. I didn't get what is replacement multi-use fields?
don't know, I have to refer to Mr. Hanson, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that some of the surfacing on the playgrounds is artificial.
But what does replacement mean?
Mr. Hanson, do you have any?
Yes,
Context for that?
I believe in many, that's standard language, because in many projects, some of the existing multi-purpose fields are used because of the new construction. And so they just want to ensure that any existing fields that have been lost during the construction project would be replaced.
If they put the septic up on the field, they're gonna have to replace the field. If it's a renovation or if it's a new build, they're gonna have to.
But shouldn't the ed spec simply say you need multi-use fields and then we figure out where do we need replacing, where do we? I don't understand.
Doesn't really fit with this one, but I get what he's saying. For example, Holland Hill, they took the whole soccer field, became the construction laydown area, trailers, everything else. So in the ed spec, it said that it should have said that field needed to be replaced once the project was complete. So, but it doesn't really fit.
Replacement, repair, replace almost, like if there's damage.
But can't that just be assumed? Like, shouldn't it simply say playgrounds will include a paved dry play area, multi-use fields, and new ADA compliant playscape equipment? And whatever the give and take and damage, no damage, septic, whatever, that has to be part of your contingency or whatever, but shouldn't it just be a multi-use field?
Versus replacement.
Yeah, I just didn't get it. I'm done.
Well, I'll give an example, like Jennings, hypothetically, if it was extended, you may not have a space for them.
No, I get it, but if we're trying to commit to, we want a multi-use field, it's just the word replacement doesn't like, we want one, let's just say, in my opinion.
Just a question right now, and it's about flooring, and there might be a different question for bathrooms than for other flooring, but I'm not sure what VCT/VCP tile is. But I remember a conversation where we were having problems, especially at the elementary school, with the bathrooms because of the porous surfaces and the grouting and the odors and like this. So there was a specific type of continuous flooring that was needed, but then I see the word tiles and then I get nervous, like, oh, there's cracks. And so can you just talk about, I don't understand enough about that concept to know what this means. And
BCT is vinyl composite tiles. That's the 12 by 12 tiles you see in all the classrooms and everything.
yeah, okay.
BCP is vinyl composite planks, which we've been going to in some of the main office areas where we're eliminating the carpet, but it still gives it a welcoming feel to a main office. The bathrooms, I will look at the tile because we are going to a new district standard, which is to do the epoxy floor. So it doesn't have the tiles, it doesn't have the grout is really where it absorbs urine and smells and then you can't get rid of it. We did do it at Osborne Hill and we did it at Ludlowe's projects and we've been having very good success with them and keeping them clean and looking vibrant. So that's why we're gonna be going to that. But back when we didn't have that yet, we were still looking at the Ludlowe ones when this was being written, so we could pull the tile out and put our spec in for the bathroom.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Any more questions? Covered a lot of ground.
Thank you so much. What I have, just in case I don't miss anything, review all clocks, analog. Review all floors / bathroom tiles. Review all language pertaining to close proximity. Review all language pertaining to sinks in non-full-size classrooms where needed. I've got a couple edits. The fill station outside the gym. The sink in the media center, well, that falls into the sink area. The access to the garden area. The spelling on complex. Private bathrooms for the administrators. The shared services follow-up question. Hopefully we'll have that for the 9 spaces. Appropriate instead of every in several areas. Flexible question on the flexible charging stations, the 2 bus lanes and the replacement field. That's what I've got as my list. And Mr. Peterson's gonna send me some help, but did I miss anything? Sound good? Anyone have any questions or thoughts on any of those things?
No, I mean, I'll reiterate that, we're still at an early stage in the process. We don't know what the layout is gonna be allowable on that site. There's a lot of unknowns, but I think it is appropriate for us to say this is the building that we want.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, and if anything comes up in anyone's mind before April, that we can talk about, please feel free to give us an email about it. But I'm sure that this will come back to you hopefully late April with some edits. And Mr. Hanson, thank you for being here so much today. Hope you can join us on the 9th, but we will talk.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Mr.
evening.
Asa, I just wanna make sure, Mr. Asa, you're cool.
I am. Thank you very much. I've been following along and I appreciate all the input and I agree with Mrs. Jacobson's list.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you again, Mr. Hanson, for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your input, your time, your experience.
You're very welcome. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Event in less than 2 hours.
Bravo.
All right, let's move on to another item of new business. Review and approval of the proposed emergency non-recurring projects to replace the Fairfield Warde High School athletic field power lights. This was hoped to be a one and done. So I'll motion that the Board of Education approve the proposed emergency non-recurring project to replace the Fairfield Warde High School athletic field power lights. Mrs. McNally, seconded by Mr. Lee, and I'll give it over to Mr. Sestak.
So as you're all aware, we had an unfortunate accident several weeks ago where one of the light towers during the windstorm snapped, fell to the ground, closing the field. After careful inspection from engineers, it was determined that the remaining 3 were not safe and had to be removed. So we took those down as well. And now they need to be replaced. As you can imagine, we're down to the one field, turf field. That's the only one at Warde. And then, so we need to move quickly on this so that we can get lights up because it really hampers usage, especially as we get into the summer months. It won't be as bad. However, it still hinders the ability to use the field and especially for rentals. But in the fall, it's obvious that this is going to be a big obstacle and very limited alternative sites across town. So sooner that we can get this through the town bodies and get the funding, we can get this project going so we can get the lights up.
Mr. Jacobson.
Sorry, this handout that we just got tonight, this doesn't match what was in our backup.
You got, I apologize, you got a new one tonight because we did get some late information after the backup went out. So you did get a new one with updated pricing in there because it was determined that the footings that are currently there that we believed could be reused. After further investigation from the engineer, we are going to be required to for the new. So with that comes the engineering, the new footings, and because we're digging into dirt and fields now, so we'll have to do the geotech and the soil sampling at that site.
Okay, so you added soil testing for 25,000.
Yep.
Footings for 55,000. Peer review of footing design is new for 10,000. And you increased the project contingency from 6% to 8%.
Because we have to do the field testing now and the materials we're gonna be taking out, so that's why we increase that contingency.
Okay, so it went up about $123,000. So can you just, I'm sorry, I was trying to do the numbers. How did this change?
After we sent out the book, further investigation of the current footings that are up there now for the lights that were taken down, it was determined that they are not suitable. Originally, we were told that they would be suitable them and reconfigure the new lights to sit on the existing footings. They further investigation determined that they were manufactured with what's called a J hook, an 1.5-inch J hook bolt that goes into the cement, and that's what holds the light to the ground. J hooks are not recommended any longer because of their known failures in that little hook part with the concrete. So it was recommended by the engineers that we do not use the existing footings. So because of that, we need to put new footings in, we need to take the old footings out. That's the 55. We need to do a peer review because anytime when you have 70-foot light towers standing, you have an engineer do a review and then you have another licensed engineer do a peer review to establish that it is a safe. It's like a second set of eyes on it. So that's what they always recommend for that. And then also because we are digging 16 feet into the ground now, we would have to do core samples and material testing for making sure that we're not making anything that's in anything these days, not contaminated, but rays they're using with Roger Ludlowe Middle School. But again, it's different than the middle school.
Polluted soil?
Polluted, yeah, same thing.
No.
No, it's not
It's
contaminated.
different than polluted.
But this also, and that's why we also increased it from 6% to 8% contingency. We feel that even if we had to do something with the soil that we're taking out of the ground, we're not taking an entire field like they are. We're taking a 12-inch round, 16-foot deep.
Times 4.
Times 4 so we're taking a truckload or two, not massive amounts.
I just wanted to understand what the difference is. When you say upon further investigation, who was that done by?
That was done by so we had an original engineer who came in and did the investigation when the light tower fell to determine what would have.
From the town engineer?
No, we had a private, the title is, he's an engineer, but he's a fail inspector engineer. So he's a specialist that comes in and looks at why things failed, what was the cause of the failure. So that's who we brought in to do that. And he looked at the footings on site and said, these look like they're not even touched at all. They should be in okay condition. Shouldn't be a reason to replace them. We were able actually to work with the town to get the actual original design specs and the engineered specs of the footings that are in the ground. And that's when he reviewed them again and he had concern about reviewing.
Can I just clarify that this is the encapsulated in the testing and investigation of 3 remaining towers, this $16,200. That work has already been done.
We had to do that work because we had to get the lights down so we could get the field open. So we did in the hopes that we will get this money back from the town. We had to reallocate money from our operating to get this field safe so that sports have already started. Kids are out every day. And even with the field marked as closed, every gate locked on that field, we actually have to send our fence crew out because the kids were peeling back the chain link fence and crawling underneath to get onto a closed field. So no matter how many times or locations we say it's closed, kids are gonna get on it. So we had to move quickly to make it a safe.
And I know that you were looking at insurance for this. What happened to that?
So I had a conversation with the town attorney. He is going to do a little more due diligence in looking into it. He doesn't believe that there is a case there. For those that don't know, these lights had a recall back in 2010 for failure in the weld, which is where we had a failure. The unfortunate part is the manufacturing of those company, as soon as that recall was issued, went bankrupt, filed for bankruptcy, so they're not around any longer. The town attorney did say there could be some potential of going after whoever their insurer was at the time, but he was gonna look into it, and that's when it was recommended from the town that we follow a process of non-reoccurring. We go for the money to keep this process moving, and if the town is able to recoup some of that money, they would be able to do that.
Okay, all right, just wanted to check in, obviously, so therefore there was no warranty or anything since they're not even existent anymore. And just what is the timeline? This has to go through all the town boards, but just after that process, assuming it gets.
Process, the manufacturing of because they don't keep them on site, they manufacture them to order, is a 4 to 6 week lead time for delivery of the towers with the lights. The geotech testing, they are currently booking 4 weeks out whenever they get a PO. So not that we can't place the order and do the geotesting at the same time, but we are shooting to have this up and back on and working for the fall sports, as he said, or as school starts for the new school year.
Oh, okay, so not this year.
It's by the time we get them through all the town bodies approved and get the order placed, it's 4 to 6 weeks for.
So are we doing templates for spring?
We haven't talked about that yet with Gina to see what the needs are, but if that's what we need to do, then we'll have to.
Roll-ins?
Yeah, I mean.
I can tell you that the fire department has said that they have six emergency lights that are.
Roll-ins?
They're roll-ins, they're battery operated, and they are GPS, so they wouldn't have a problem leaving them out there because they can't walk without them being able to track them. We're still talking with them on that because the problem with it is we may have to purchase chargers for them, for their battery systems. They said, keep in mind, we could, once they're set up, it's a big breakdown process. So the batteries on them would have to go to a charger in one of the buildings or something. What they don't own those chargers because they are able to charge in the base. So the other option would be to run extension cords to each one of them to be able to charge. So
That versus renting them.
That versus renting them, but renting them becomes the bigger issue because the rentals are, most of the time are gas operated. So we need to train someone how to start them, how to stop them, now they're gonna run.
We've done that in the past at Ludlowe when the birds were in the nest.
Yeah, no, we definitely have. We rented that. Well, actually, when I was here the last time we got the light from the town's emergency response team and we put it up on the field while the lights were out for safety reasons.
Okay, and Mr. Peterson, just for you or to Mr. Testani, for the 584 and adding to our bonding list for this year, was there any thought of not bonding this and just asking for it to be paid for? Or was this a request of the town that we go through bonding, or is this just what we're proposing at this time?
I don't know that we're specifying bonding versus
what?
transfers.
Okay,
We're waiting on the pricing so that we can ask for the money, and then before we can even do that, they recommended the bonding.
okay, because non-recurring suggested to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it was a bonding project.
That's the way it was recommended.
That's the way they were.
So the town did, so they know.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
all right.
They recommended before we could ask for the money.
Okay, so just going through all of we've done, it's just unusual, we've had this many
It's been an unusual year.
bonding things, so just looking at our total coming up, so, all right, so as long as they were aware, all right.
I just so you know, I did the math today, just it might come up. With this project, this puts us for this year's bonding at 11,724,710, which is still under the previous administration.
It is.
So.
Yeah, RTM still has to vote on the 3 operating budget items still.
We heard them last night and they will vote.
It puts us at that amount, but 2 of our projects that we approved, this body approved, didn't move forward, so. All right, thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Before we go on, I just wanna, before I forget, Ms. Brown, if we can at some point update the enclosures for this meeting. 'Cause I looked at, this still has the prior numbers on this, just so for the public to make sure everything is square. Mr. Lee.
How comfortable are you with the 8% project contingency? Because knowing what we've seen in this town and knowing that further testing is gonna be needed, I'd be more comfortable if the contingency was higher to cover, instead of coming back to a board asking for more money. Cause at the end of the day, if the contingency is not used, it just.
No, absolutely, and originally it was in there for 6%, but because we are doing the tests, we do have to do the testing now. But as I said, you're talking using Roger Ludlowe Middle School, they're feet down in that area, the entire size of the field. Whereas we're talking about removing 16 feet of 12-inch circle. It's gonna be a core drill machine that's gonna take it out. It actually cannot interrupt the area around it because it has to be what they call virgin soil in order for the light towers to be able to stand. We're comfortable with the amount of soil that would have to come out if it needed to come out.
I apologize if this was already asked while I stepped away for a minute, but this is just I'm obviously fully supportive of the plan, but any idea of how much money we are losing by not being able to rent the field at night?
Right now, because of the weather, we're not really losing, and we're going into where it's gonna be light till 8 o'clock at night, but it's towards the end of the summer where we'll start seeing it. That's why we need to get this move quickly so that we can get this up and running before we start seeing a lot of that loss. And we do have, as Mr. Besides that, we do have sports. Dina has been rearranging her schedule. Jill painted the field over there with 2 different colors now so that she can have different groups using the same field at the same time. So there is some offset of not being able to run practices as late as they used.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this, Ms. Raisa?
Yeah, with regard, this obviously predates Mr. Testani and Mr. Papa George, but knowing that these light poles were recalled in 2010, Mr. Papa George, are you aware in the files or in your due diligence and research? Is this something that had come up? I'm just curious why we proactively hadn't done something about this, 15 years ago, so this wouldn't happen today.
So we dug through everything that was left behind my predecessor. We found no note, no comment about this, and as you all know, he was very on that type of stuff, so we had no record of it. It was actually the engineer who we hired did the due diligence that found the recall and actually found Fairfield Ward listed as one of the sites. Further conversations determined that when the recall was issued and the company went bankrupt, it kind of probably died at that point and never got notified out or moved beyond that point because of the fact that there was nobody to hold the feet to the fire to make them do it because there was no one to do it. I actually just reached out to Milford and Bridgeport as well because they have units on that list as well, and they were surprised to hear that. So.
All right, so this for the bigger picture here, lesson learned, I would just make a suggestion. I'm just one board member, but to you and Mr. Testani, that we dedicate some time in the coming months to look at the rest of our infrastructure around the district for things that could have safety concerns, whether they be bleachers, light poles, anything like that. And we should probably do a little research to make sure that there isn't a similar situation like this on any other things around the district.
Sonny, you want to comment on that? Okay.
Was there any other sites like Ludlowe? They weren't on that list. It's totally different.
Totally
Okay.
factor different years. Oh.
Okay. And were those checked or are those as well while we were at it?
Check them, but we right out this summer having them. I know it sounds rough saying wait until the summer, but the gentleman who did our weld inspections for us books 8-10 months out in advance. We were able to get him there because of the fact that one fell and failed. So it's a very unique to be able to do weld inspections like that. It's a unique trade, so they're very hard to come by.
Okay, just wanted to see if there was anything else. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments from board members? I'll take it out to the public, such as there is here. And back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Benito, unanimous vote. Thank you very much. We can get working. Okay, moving on, new business item. We're on 8C, first reading of policy 3240 tuition fees.
Thank you.
Mrs. Maxon Canelli, can I just interrupt for 1 second to the chair? To my fellow board members, I apologize. I have to log off now, but just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason.
All right, I just misplaced, I got my notes out of order. Hold on. So for tuition fees, I actually have no notes. I think we briefly discussed it. There's the change of name in terms of which policy The information is in regarding school employees, children being allowed who are non-residents, who are allowed to attend our schools. And obviously, the first sentence is now factually wrong, so that's why that had to be struck. Happy to take questions, or you can get them to me later.
Questions on this? Moving along, first reading of policy 3250, materials, service, fees, fines, charges, loss, damage, equipment.
Yeah, this one we took a little more time doing some wordsmithing on. We did add the language regarding the schools are authorized to withhold grades, diplomas, or report cards. And what was the other big group? Other than that, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but happy to take questions.
Dickinson?
Just a couple quick things. The first paragraph, it stated that all instructional equipment, books, etc., right, are covered. But then in the last paragraph, it talks about reviewing fees for all equipment. So my question is, should there be an athletic equipment inserted before the second equipment? I just was confused between the first paragraph and the last paragraph, where first we say all equipment is covered, but then we're talking about fees for equipment. Was that a specific type of equipment in the, I think this pertains to rental space equipment, like is it lights for a play or whatnot? It just can't be the same as the equipment in the first paragraph.
In the first paragraph, instructional equipment.
This says all equipment in the third paragraph.
Yes, we would have to put all non-instructional equipment.
So it's not just.
We didn't discuss that, so this is new.
So sorry, just raising that issue, I found it to be a conflict, so I'll leave it with you to specify what that meant to reconcile. And then in the second paragraph at the end, I just see a quotation mark that I presume is an.
Say that again?
End of second paragraph.
Yes, yep, no, yeah, that's part of the quote from the other policy we took it from. Yes, that should be gone.
So those were just my two.
I'll just note that there are several Oxford comma issues.
It's already on it. And they were done in policy, but no one's perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? All right, moving on. First reading of policy 4133-4233, authorized transportation for personnel.
So for this one, sorry, I've got some notes. Actually, this one we had very limited discussion on. We were fine with the changes that were recommended by staff. And so we didn't have much extended discussion on this one.
Questions? And just Mr. Testani, this represents two modes by which pay for mileage. Correct. Reflects current practice. Without objection, I'll move on to first reading to delete policy 6165, material fees.
Yeah, so first of all, we felt that this one was, this is one that was recommended by staff for deletion. The idea of fees was better covered under the business, non-instructional 3000 series anyway than the instructional series. But otherwise, if there are any questions, happy to take them or wait for the next meeting.
Great. Seeing none, moving along. All right, item 8G, discussion.
Yes.
Recommended language for policy 6142.2, reading language arts, and policy 6144, controversial issues.
So I had noticed the board back in, and I believe it was February. I went to try to go find those minutes, but they're not posted yet. I am looking to have policy take these up because we can get the staff that we need for that April 1st meeting. So that, and included here, were the original language for controversial issues and the original language for reading language arts. Then there was what was voted out of policy. And I had told the board when these were, just in case you don't recall, these were the two policies that were voted down and sent back to policy. And I'm guessing that agenda may have been long or whatever, but I didn't try to get it into an extended discussion at that time to get feedback on language. But I am now requesting it. I'm not requesting it as a discussion item tonight, but what I am asking and honestly, this is most especially from, and I don't need to say names now, especially the people who voted it down. and not, this is not a negative thing or whatever, I don't know what to change or what to even recommend to policy or to put in any recommended language because I was in favor of the edit. So what I'm asking is that if I could get, and it doesn't have to be formal, but if I can get from and this is of course also true for the people who voted in favor of the policy. If you look at it now and have some revised ideas of how it might be better. But it's just, I don't think it's right for me to go back to policy and have staff there and look at staff and say, what would you change? They already gave us their recommendation. Now we own the process. And so I am looking for feedback from my fellow board members. An email would be great with what you were looking for. And it could be as simple as, I prefer the original policy to the amended, and that's what you want. Or I liked this in the revised one, I just didn't like this. I'm just looking for guidance because Mr. Asa, Mrs. Guernsey, and myself need to know what it is that the board was looking for, and I don't want to guess.
Mrs. Guernsey.
I just wanted to draw attention to the controversial issues policy. Just ask, if board members are looking at this policy to maybe think about a new lens that, there's a lot that's changed in our world just in the past few weeks since we looked at this policy. We have states in the United States, not Connecticut, that now consider climate change to be a controversial issue. That's something that we used as like a funny example in policy of like, of course it's not. So this is really serious language here, and we have to be extra careful and just like, I'm just asking to think about it sort of using this new lens of, really what is controversial and how is that shifting today.
But a reminder that as we deal with policy, the last thing we want to do is start giving specific examples. The language of the policy have to work no matter whether it's it's for those things that you don't anticipate being controversial, for example. But again, so you've got in black, that's existing policy. This was a 2004 policy. CABE, as part of the audit, recommended that we get an update. You have then additionally included how we voted it out of policy with staff recommended language to which we made some edits. And needless to say, the newer one was, I'll say, far more robust. I'm comfortable saying that, but again, the board was not. So we need some feedback because these two are very, very different from each other.
Mr. Lee.
A question about the controversial issues, right? So if we're talking about a teacher teaching a history class, it almost seems that if you go by this, they can't really teach history anymore. So are we open to discussion in those classes up to a certain point? Or does he open up and then someone in that classroom gets upset, goes home and says, what's this, like, does that open a Pandora's box kind of thing?
Well, keep in mind, some things that you might consider controversial are in our approved social studies curriculum. So of course, we're going to be talking about things over which there has been past tense, present, or maybe in the future suddenly become controversial. But we have plenty of that in the curriculum itself. Of course, teachers should be talking about it. What a lot of our idea had been is how to give staff, because again, keep in mind, that's the fundamental role of policy. It is how the Board of Ed directs staff. And we were looking to give, if you're looking to bring something up, what am I as a teacher, or more importantly, what am I as an administrator responsible for? And that was, I think, what formed a lot of our conversation when you look at a lot of this red language, but under no circumstances were we interested in ducking controversial issues. But there is an acknowledgement that, one, of course, there has to be a reason in the curriculum, but you hit right on it. Social studies, something's gonna happen tomorrow. And a teacher has the opportunity to, discuss it. There's an appropriate way to do so and not. That was a really long answer, so.
How does that affect the student outside the classroom that's still in the school though? So let's say they talk about it in school, in the classroom, and they're in the cafeteria and they're talking to their friends about this. And someone overhears it, or someone at that table doesn't agree, or it becomes a big.
It's not an instructional issue though.
Okay, so this is just focusing on, this has something to do with the policy for students and things like that outside the class.
Yeah, and obviously that's that is happening in our world, every day right now. This is giving the guidance to staff. So, and obviously the better they handle it, hopefully the less of that we might have, but.
Mr. Krasnoff?
My question on this was, seemed like the old one put the onus on the students to have the opportunity when appropriate to present the other point of view. And the new one puts the onus on the teachers to have to present the point of view. Is that correct? Is that the gist of it?
To be honest with you, I actually would have to reread the old one because I didn't spend a lot of time reading that because I was so keen on the newer.
It says students will have the opportunity where appropriate to present and support their conclusions before persons who have opposing points of view. Teachers will help students recognize the need for continuous and objective examination of these issues in light of the changing conditions in society and as new evidence becomes available.
I would argue both of those sentences are about the teacher, because notice that the student one is students will have the opportunity. Who creates the opportunity? The teacher does. So I would say both of those are teacher directed.
Well, in the new one, and again, I may be wrong, but instruction shall be presented in a balanced manner without bias or prejudice and without promoting any particular point of view, which from my standpoint says that both points of views or all points of views need to be covered. I kind of agree with Mr. Lee. There's certain topics I could think of that would be opening a massive Pandora's box with that.
And that is also where, needless to say, a teacher is having to, they are paid professionals. They are having to exercise their judgment. And that's where, so what do I as a teacher have to fall back on? One, is it even appropriate because of the curriculum? Two, is it appropriate based on what I'm supposed to be, as this classroom teacher? If it's opening up too much, then maybe it's something that the teacher isn't going to do. It's obviously I have to be vague because I'm not trying to get into specific topics, because that's the idea of the policy, is that no matter which one you're thinking of right now, which may or may not be the same one as what I'm thinking of, the policy has to work for that. So
I just want to make sure we're protecting the teacher, because that's my one concern. That's why I kind of like the old language. Because personally, I feel this puts a lot of responsibility on the teacher, which from my point of view isn't fair, but that was my concern. I'm just being honest.
No, that's, and that, again, that's what I'm asking for. So it could be that what you email me to say is, I want the original draft with no change. That's what I want to find out. The only thing I would say is that if I'm a teacher looking to possibly bring up a controversial issue, if what you give me is really vague, that can make me more uncomfortable, because then it's, well, but am I doing the right thing or not? Should I bring this up or not? How should I pursue this topic or not? So it was not the idea of how can we get a gotcha moment for staff. Policy was not looking for that. This was meant to give guidance so that you don't have the negative repercussion of you didn't do what was professionally expected of you. That was the idea of our conversation. But again, we weren't overly comfortable with it.
It's kind of a catch-22 either way.
Yeah, but that doesn't, I guess I would argue that we need something. Controversial issues are gonna happen. Staff is gonna look for guidance. We as the board can give them guidance. I need 8 people to let us know, or 6 people to let the 3 of us know. What are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You want me to go?
Well, I saw your hand up for it. Whoever wants to go.
I was just gonna say, the 2 points that, unless I'm misremembering, that we didn't hear from teachers or the union that in fact they were concerned about the current policy, that they needed more guidance. In fact, it might have been the opposite. And
I don't recall them reacting actually to, they were a little bit worried, because who wouldn't with a policy called controversial issues? But I don't think they ever actually read and responded to the original.
But I guess my point is, the changes that were made were not in response to teacher concerns. That we were, and in fact, I think Dr. Zephanzik said that not only were they not, but that this policy isn't needed at all. Is that what, we repeated that a couple, so.
Non-required policy. We looked at it only because it came up on the audit. and required revision. So we went and found what the newest version of controversial issues was from the policymakers and presented it to the policy committee.
And the first draft that we had looked at, and then we sent it back to get the second one, had an additional 2-3 pages that's stipulated by student, by teacher, and we said, nope. You know, once we saw that, we pushed that off, said if we need that at all, it's in regs. But again, these are I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other. The policy was voted down. We need direction. We are taking it up next Tuesday, April 1st. I'm hoping for feedback by Friday. I say that, of course, as somebody who could never give feedback by Friday. So if I get it over the weekend, I just want to make sure I have time to get it out to Mrs. Guernsey and Mr. Asa, so they have time to read it before we sit down with it. And the staff we have asked to be present so that we can address it.
Jacobson?
Thank you. I'm gonna give you my feedback now. Reading and language arts.
Oh, wait, okay. Are we done with this one?
No, I'll come.
Oh, you're gonna do both.
I'm going in order of Mr. Peterson's motion here, but of the policies, but reading and language arts, I simply just like the first paragraph to be with you. I understand everything below that because it refers to a 1999 reference. I thought that possible language substitution for that second part of the policy was our district improvement plan and any goals that we've identified in that regarding our expectations. In terms of the goals as a possible, not really overly concerned with it, but as just as a suggestion of the committee, if they wanted something else in there, that would be an area to look to. The top paragraph I like as it is. And then I think my concern was by just striking it all together, I felt like there wasn't a new expectation inserted versus the complete deletion. So I hope that makes sense of what I'm saying. So if we are saying as a district today, our policy is that each individual must be provided with an educational program at his level of ability and achievement, I love that, but we're just striking that, and I felt like there was no in lieu of what's our new expectation. The new expectation for me, based on what's in front of me, is that there is none. I know that's not the case, Mrs. Maxicanelli, but from a policy standpoint, I'm taking out something that exists today and I'm replacing it with nothing. So that was my feedback on that.
Thank you.
Controversial issues. So I'll echo that a majority of districts don't have this policy, especially in Fairfield County. I am perfectly comfortable with what already is in existence that mirrors some of the districts that do have it in a much more simple. I couldn't find any other district that has any of this language at all. So if that came from CAVE, it doesn't seem like any other district has adopted it at this point anyway. I think last time I had raised Mrs. Maxicanelli, the bottom of the page under curriculum definition. I had raised the issue when this first came to us back in February. I think you said it was sensitive and controversial issues. So there was this new insert of a word sensitive, and I didn't understand what that meant. So that's feedback there. I don't even know if that word's just redundant and it came out or it actually has a different meaning for you. 3, I was most concerned about. Other districts that do have this policy lean more heavily in favor of protecting teacher viewpoints and opinions versus putting in a refraining or statement. I found number 3 to be chilling, to be honest. Number 8, the subject matter of the instruction shall not otherwise be prohibited by state or federal law. Is there anything that we know of right now that's prohibited by federal or state law to be talked about?
I don't want to guess.
I'm guessing in the world of First Amendments, that's not probably the case, but so I'm just wondering why this is even in here.
You asked this last time and I haven't done the research yet, to tell you the truth. But,
Okay.
I would agree with you. Perhaps there's not something passed by the legislature, but there's case law on in terms of First Amendment rights, right? So you bring up religion, for example. I'd imagine there's some prohibition, perhaps not written in a statute, but written in case law that prohibits some content being taught or not taught in a classroom.
Okay, no,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. So I would just be curious to know if this is a necessary provision or not. And usually when something is a subject of law, we've taken to its law, so we don't have to include it in policy, but I understand for this policy, you might want to be more explicit on that. So I just have a question on that. And then the last paragraph, Mrs. Mexican, the whole guest speaker issue.
We spent a long time on that paragraph.
I get it. I'm sure that you did. I fully appreciate and understand the making of the sausage and how difficult it is. I just think that there's, if we go back to the definition, for which there are no easy answers, that's gonna be a real, for me, piece of the puzzle. Because like if someone's coming and giving you a presentation that we just had at our high schools about overdoses on opioids, and that's one perspective, I'm not expecting our teachers to come back in and saying that that's not a thing and that there's another perspective on that.
And
that's a real life example, right?
wouldn't have considered that a controversial issue and therefore this wouldn't have applied.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So some people might, right? I mean, or Narcan or training or whatever it might be. I'm just using that as a more recent example of a recent presentation and a guest speaker. So that just has a concern for me that we're putting on the teacher on the day of a guest speaker presentation, some sort of a lesson plan that offers a different perspective than what they just sat through. I don't know. I also find it maybe is that confusing. Why would we have that speaker then in?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Saying to kids like,
Yeah, so I work in a school where about over 5 years ago, we had in some Israeli soldiers who came and spoke about their experience, and fabulous speakers, fascinating. To say there was a small uproar is putting it mildly, because it was very decidedly one point of view. And at no point was another point of view addressed. And there was a great hubbub about that, how there was no follow-up for that. And this was a known speaker, an anticipated point of view, and that was problematic. So that's something which, and again, I would not have considered the overdosing opioid or anything along that to be something that this policy would address at all.
I'm just saying that what someone deems is subjective. So that, again, in the definition, for which there are no easy answers. Lots of easy answers out there for most things. So, I mean, if it's a science-based, whatever it may be. So, I just overall, have concerns on some of those positions that I've told you about. You take that as you will.
Well, I guess I'm still unclear. Are you preferring the original? Would you prefer that?
I like just the way that it is. Yeah, I mean, the existing language, you know, I could see the benefit, as I always do, in having definitions, because that's always helpful in subjective policies, but the guidelines, I like number one, like suitable for the age and maturity. That's great. I mean, I think that's just a normal customary expectation for us to have on anything that we're teaching, whether it be this or anything else. Not sure that needs to be explicitly stated. I like balanced manner without bias or prejudice. That's great too. 3, 4, 8, and then the last paragraphs were really the areas. If you're gonna continue with the guidelines part of this, or if other board members want to continue, those were just giving you my perspective.
Thank you.
Can I interact very, very quickly? Are there board members who would prefer this policy to be deleted? Seeing no immediate.
That's helpful. Thank you for asking that.
I was kind of thinking that, like, why do we need it if it's not? I mean, I was gonna piggyback on what Ms. Jacobs said about a speaker. If you have speaker A come and talk, are you now saying speaker B should come and talk? Or are we just saying no speakers on such that case?
No, we're like in the hypothetical, well, it wasn't hypothetical. In the example I gave, obviously staff would be doing that knowing they are bringing someone who is going to speak to a controversial issue. If you're going to knowingly do that, this was not a surprise that this became controversial. It just wasn't well prepared for. That if you're going to do that, then staff has to be prepared. And again, we tried very specifically on that one to put the onus on administration to guide staff that there needs to be again, you don't have to have the guest speaker at all. But if you're going to, and it's controversial, you need to be prepared to acknowledge the other point of view. That was the idea there.
I'd like to speak to your question.
But I'm sorry,
Oh,
first
sorry,
is.
Mr. Lee, were you not done?
Just based on all that, I kind of agree that I would maybe just delete the whole policy on that and not put it in.
So then understand that doesn't make controversial issues, and again, if that ends up being where we end up, that's where we end up. But it's not like controversial issues are going to go away. And it's not like staff is not going to not look for guidance. And what you now leave that as is you can have one principal who says, we're not dealing with any of this. And that's the impact on those students. Another school will handle it differently. When there is no policy, that's exactly what that means. There is the board has opted to give no feedback on how things happen in the district.
On this policy though, same scenario, even if we had this policy, principal A can't say no and principal B can say yes, or it still could be. Like, I think I'm confused when it comes to staff. If it's really something they're considering, right? They would go to the principal. That principal could say, don't do it.
True.
But then at another school, that principal could say, yeah, that's a great idea, but just be ready to possibly get some flack.
Look, so much of this depends on staff. You know, when you have thoughtful, prepared, well-guided staff, that's exactly where you might feel like we don't need this. But some people will be newer. Some people will look for guidance, and without, I'm trying really hard not to present an argument. Obviously, I'm in favor of our having something, but if it was the will of the board to not deal with that, then fine. I'm just saying, I don't see that the need for it would go away. Controversy isn't gonna go away. All we're saying is we are abdicating on taking any stance on how you handle it. And if that's what the board is comfortable with, then we abdicate.
Mr. Cesar, do you want to say anything?
I don't see a need for the policy personally. To Mr. Lee's point, I think the guidance is going to be provided to the teachers or to the support staff or whomever is thinking about doing something. Based on individual feelings. I think teachers will go out on a limb based on how they feel or what they're willing to risk as well. I don't think the policy protects anyone, nor does it put them and leave them out to dry either way.
See,
Because policy or not, things that will get someone in trouble most likely will be things that are in the law or violating the laws. I think we brought it up the last time this came up. Teacher in a district here in the state of Connecticut, it came up about religion.
Yeah.
And no policy was gonna protect that teacher from that topic. I think to your point there, policy had nothing to do with it. Whether because unless you're simultaneously giving both point of views, if you provide one perspective with a guest speaker, then the opposite, if it's from the teacher, is not going to negate what the speaker said. Because you didn't bring in a speaker on the other side. And if you do bring a speaker on the other side, it's not gonna be the same day. So by the time you backfill it with the other's perspective, the blow up's gonna happen, so.
may I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's election time.
Yep.
A teacher with strident political views starts voicing those to staff. Starts voicing those to students. And you say, stop. What is, and I'm asking this out of genuine ignorance.
Yep.
What is your rationale for why you can say that? Why you can tell that teacher, I am suppressing your voice. You are not allowed to advance a political view. Or if it were another, pick a controversial topic, you're not allowed to just advance that view.
Well, we would not typically point to whether you had a policy or not. It's
But if the teacher said, you can't tell me not to say that, this topic is in the curriculum. It's civics class. I can talk about the presidential race. It's science.
Talk about the process of the.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about advancing a one-sided view.
We would have a different conversation around it. But it wouldn't be because you have a policy. The policy says you have to provide both sides.
Or not do it.
Or not do it.
The new policy says
The teacher that's going to do that's gonna do it.
And you feel that from a human resources perspective, that it would not be a union issue if you told a teacher, you must stop, I am suppressing your voice.
Correct. Just like we don't have an attendance policy, but we have conversations all the time about teachers or staff members across the board who abuse their sick time. There's no policy around it. I even asked to create one. We don't have one, but we do address those, and the union has an understanding that if people are abusing time, that we can have those conversations, so. I mean, we're here to educate students, not to provide one perspective.
Thank you. And in that vein, I will share what I appreciate about the existing language, actually, and to answer Mr. Peterson's question to the board. I agree with you, it's not going away. What I like about the existing language is that it is expectation of this board in our school district that affords, I might change that word, allow to afford students to recognize differences of opinion. That's an important skill today. That allows for them to learn to recognize and understand controversial issues is a basic skill that we want our kids to learn. That is in this policy. I like that. That there should be an opportunity for them to gather information about issues, understand different viewpoints, make their own personal judgments and conclusions. I like that that's in this policy. I think that it's important that we say that we expect for our students to learn in an age-appropriate developmental level that are tied to our curriculum, differences of opinions today more than ever. And that we give guidance to teachers that to help students, get information, secure that information, learn techniques about critical analysis and make their independent judgments, to hear from each other and share from each other. That's what I like about this policy, is that it's focused on what we are saying as a Board of Education, as a district, that we expect kids in Fairfield to learn how to do well, how to tolerate, how to hear each other, how to get information, that's information to make their own decisions. That's why I like this what the existing language. I wouldn't want those parts to go away, personally speaking. And I like that, like I said, I've talked about the difference. So in answer to Mr. Peterson's question, do we want to delete it? Again, open to hearing my fellow colleagues, but I think what's in the existing language is important for us to say that in any time and era that we want our kids to learn these things and to be able to at least hear other people's viewpoints, learn about them, and then go from there. So that's why I like the existing language.
Thank you.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I'm not gonna repeat what Jacobson said, but I agree with a lot of her comments. I also think it's important for the parents, students, teachers, everyone to just know aware of it as a policy versus not having it. I'd appreciate you saying delete it, and even here at first I thought about it, but as I read it, I personally feel it's a good thing. I don't think it hurts anyone to have this here.
And you are advocating for the original language?
The original one, please.
Okay.
Mr. Lee?
All the talk about the teachers and stuff, you haven't gotten feedback from the unions or teachers, right?
There were a few that they were hedgy about, but I mean, we were very clearly asking, we're open to change, and we received nothing definitive about it. But obviously, there are representatives here right now who are hearing the discussion, so when we bring this up next Tuesday, and I'm delighted that one thing that has changed in the past year or two, there is almost always an FEA representative at all of our policy meetings. So, I'm hopeful that whoever will be in attendance will be apprised of this, and if they have feedback, we're always asking for it. So.
I'm inclined to move on at this point. I think we've had a very.
The only thing I want to add is we haven't talked about the reading and language arts aside from what Mrs. Jacobson said. I'm not looking to belabor this any further, but if people could take an eye to the reading language arts one. It could be that you agree with what Mrs. Jacobson said. It could be that you have others, but we are tackling both next Tuesday. So I want to make sure that our work reflects the contributions of everybody. Thank you.
To reiterate, sooner rather than later, comments.
Yes, please. Recognizing my own.
Thanks everybody for spending time on this. I think it's a good discussion to have. We'll move on to item 9, superintendent's report.
Just a few items. Want to recognize the 29 talented Fairfield Middle School students who participated in the Connecticut Music Educators Association Western Regional Festival in Wilton. Over 2 days of rehearsals, these dedicated young musicians showcased their hard work and passion, culminating in an incredible performance on Saturday evening. I just want to say thank you to our middle school music teachers for all their hard work, guidance, and support of these students. And it's fitting because March is Music in Our Schools Month and a time to celebrate the power of music education. So if you look to our social media, we're sharing a lot of classroom snapshots all month around music education.
Our award-winning social media.
Award-winning. Absolutely. But it's a great place to showcase all the great work that's happening in our classrooms across the district. I do want to say, just recognize the students and staff at Jennings and Stratfield rocked their socks this week to show support for World Down Syndrome Day. School communities work to spread awareness, show kindness, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique abilities and differences of others. Our workshop students from all 3 middle schools proudly showcased their passion projects in a gallery walk in our Talented and Gifted program, sharing their curiosity, research, discoveries, and creativity with parents and incoming 5th grade students. This experience empowered them to take ownership of their learning while fostering creativity, problem-solving skills, and intellectual engagement. We're also proud of our students who excelled at the National History Day Fairfield Regional Contest at Sacred Heart. Their hard work and dedication have earned them a spot at the state contest on May 3rd, and we're wishing them all the best of luck in the States. And Warde student Yosef Ibrahim was selected as the Connecticut recipient for the Billy Michael Award by the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. He'll be traveling in May to accept and participate in the American Spirit Awards, May 29th to June 1st. Billy Michael Student Leadership Award is presented annually to one student from each state who embodies American spirit in their community. So it's a huge award. Just a couple of newsworthy things. We are reopening Sherman Annex tomorrow. The tree was taken down safely today. They were able to get a crane. So limited damage to the roof, but nothing significant. That we'll have somebody out there tomorrow. In a collaboration with Sarah Payne, our new nursing supervisor, on May 20th and 21st, there's going to be 2 events, one at Warde High School and then one at Ludlowe. It's called In a Heartbeat, through some philanthropists Sarah's collaborated with. They're going to bring free EKG screenings to middle and high school students at no charge. So any students and parents who wish to bring their children for EKG screening. It has been, she talked a little bit about in our previous district, how they did this, and they were able to do some early detection of some students for follow-up with a cardiologist. So this is just something that she'd like to bring to the town, and thought it'd be a great idea. Just can't be too careful, especially as we get into the summer months with some of our sports training during the hot and humid season. So, and just as we talked earlier about policy, and it was mentioned last week at the Board of Finance budget presentation, we are closely monitoring this year's budget when it comes to utilities and some contracted services. We are experiencing an overage in those areas. So we are monitoring over the next couple of weeks and seeing what moves we'd have to make just to make sure that we stay on budget. We have a significant decrease in utility usage from last year. However, because of the rates, we are seeing about a $500,000 increase costs, so. And then we have 6 speech language pathologists that are out on long-term leave, which is contributing to contracted services at about $5,000 a day to cover those services. So just to make everyone aware of that.
And just to be specific with utilities, we're running at a projected $500,000 over our budget.
Over our budget,
Not
even
just
though.
every year increase it, yeah.
Thank God for our synergistics folks, because our usage is significantly down. If that was through that venture, we could be up quite a bit more.
I was gonna say, you didn't have a chance to mention the townwide band festival.
Oh.
Which took place, which was just absolutely phenomenal. I
I'm
attended
sorry.
it and I didn't know if you were gonna get to that. And it was just such a great celebration of music for our town. We had over 350 band musicians participate from grade 6 honors band all the way through our 12th graders, and it was just wonderful. It ended with a song that everyone played together and it was like magnificent, so awesome. Really joyful.
Any questions on the superintendent's report? On to committee liaison reports. Tracy?
Board of Health, we haven't met, but we're meeting April 21st. I have a note out to Sands Cleary around vaccination rates for kindergarten, and then also on measles. So I'll hopefully have an update soon on that, and then to probably add it as an agenda item in the April 21st meeting. So.
Just from Parks and Rec, 2 things I thought were really interesting. A proposal came before us. It's gonna be continued. A determination was not made to add a composting bin at Lake Mohegan for people's food waste from their homes, which I just love the idea that the spirit of this is spreading. A lot of references to what our schools are already doing. So just thought that was nice. And then I also like to give shout outs to our retired, moving on Board of Ed members. And so congratulations to Anthony Calabrese, who is now the new Chief of Community Services for the town. So there will be a new Parks and Rec Director. I don't know the timeline on that, but his title is now Chief of Community Services. He's he continues to oversee Parks and Rec as well as a few other departments in town to try to, provide oversight and efficiencies and guidance and all of that. So just congratulations to Anthony.
I'll just talk about the budget very quickly. I know all of you, many of you are aware of, we were before the Board of Finance recently. This Saturday, just so everyone knows, is the public hearing for the Board of Finance. It's gonna take place at 9:30 in the Warde High School Auditorium. The original agenda said Ludlowe. It's gonna be at Warde, 9:30. If you want to come out and give public comment on that. Their vote is going to be next Wednesday, the 2nd of April, here in this conference room, starting at 7:30. There's no live public comment at that meeting. And I just learned today that the Board of Ed will be heard before the RTM on Wednesday, April 9th, beginning at 7:30. And unfortunately, it looks like there'll be several groups in front of us. Legal, Health Department, TPZ, Building Department will be coming up before us. So that meeting starts at 7:30. That could be a late night for us. We'll see if that agenda holds, but that is the current plan.
Are they gonna start any earlier?
I could certainly ask.
That's a great idea.
They usually don't.
Great idea.
8:00.
Yeah.
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 So the invite came out today from Town Hall from Jen, starting at 7:30.
Mr.
I can certainly ask.
I know Board of Finance met tonight for their follow-ups, so to speak, and obviously we're here at the same time, but I briefly asked Mr. Testani, but we weren't asked for any additional follow-up or to come back a second time.
Not that I'm aware of.
We weren't asked. There was a handful of questions that were asked that evening that we took notes that were then put into the document that we provided to them prior to this evening. Nothing really substantial. They were things that were pretty much asked and answered several times that night. They were looking at ridership on buses, tried to explain how that works and the legalities around it. They asked a little bit about teacher contract, lane change, if we had any anticipation of, but again, Teachers are still working through that. They have until September to do so, so talked about that a little bit. There was an ask for kind of a central office organization. We provided them that as well. So we're just.
Can I just say there seems to be an ongoing confusion on fields? Because they asked you a lot of questions about how you, like, the fields that you were taking care of in our new bid versus what Parks and Rec takes care of, and there just continues to be this like mystery around who's in charge of what fields around here. So I don't know if this can get like sorted out at some point in the future, because it's been like, it's been an irritant to a lot of people for a long time. Like, I don't know how, it's not just, if it's on school, it's school, and if it's on town, it's town, and it's just as simple as that. But it's not. So that just was one of the areas that struck me in your conversations about people who have been long-serving members of our community don't know which fields are managed by which entity. So it's frustrating. And I get the public doesn't understand it either. So it's just one of those areas I hope that we can sort out at some point.
We're not talking about significant dollars either. It's not the multi-million dollars in field maintenance. We're not taking care of it.
It's still hundreds of thousands though.
Well,
between each side, so
yeah.
It would certainly be nice to clear up any areas of ambiguity.
right, like why is that an elementary school field under Parks and Rec, not the BOE budget, you know what I mean, it's just confusing, so anyway, all right, thank you for the update.
Any other committee liaison reports?
I'll go.
No, please.
I'm just continuing to watch track legislation. It's moving, things are moving forward, starting to get voted out of committee. Certainly looking at a lot of interesting testimony by the commissioner, but I'm tracking those, so and of course keeping central office abreast as things proceed. Some hopeful things, some concerning things as usual, so there's that. And of course, you've given us a lot of work to work in facilities, and we will continue that at the next phase. So thank you for your input and time today.
Just want to end on one piece. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to attend a conference up in Bristol provided by CAPS. Jonathan Haidt was the keynote speaker, if you're aware, from the Anxious Generation author. It was, talked a lot about the book. Excellent speaker. Thought for a second, maybe we could bring him here to the district. Thought better of it when I found out how much he charges to speak, but yeah, but I think it really frames a bigger conversation when we start talking more in policy about the urgency that some of our parents have been advocating for and how we need to move quickly on really limiting the exposure of especially of our younger students in elementary, middle school to screen.
Thanks for that. Open board comment? Ms. McIntyre?
So very excited if anybody has some free time, okay, besides the whole Board of Finance open town hall. So Odyssey of the Mind competition is taking place this Saturday up at Bethel. And I'm very excited to say that we have 8 Fairfield teams that are competing. Riverfield Elementary has one team, Holland Hill has a primary, which are the little guys, and as well as an older team. And then PTA Council, this has been such a breakthrough that Odyssey of the Mind now allows for mixed school teams to be sponsored in this way. And so PTA Council is sponsoring 5 teams, I believe, 2 middle school and 3 elementary school. So very excited to get their results after this Saturday.
Excellent. Mrs. Guernsey?
Read this. Through the chair to the board, I'd like to thank the board for electing me to the position of vice chair. It's been a privilege to serve our board in this capacity. Given the fundamental disagreements that the chair and I have regarding the function of leadership, I have thoughtfully deliberated about how this situation might be resolved. Some of the frustrations that I've communicated with our chair include a failure to bring curriculum to the board for a vote in a timely way and not allowing for a mid-year evaluation of our superintendent against the advice of our attorney. As a result, I'm stepping down from this role effective immediately. I hope that this separation from leadership will allow me to continue to work collaboratively with the accomplished members of this board for the remainder of my term.
Thank you for your service. I believe the bylaws say that at our next meeting, any officer who steps down will need to discuss that. So I'll consult the bylaws and see what we need to do about the agenda. Any other open board comment? Public comment? Any members of the public? Gary?
I'd be very, Gary, there's the Patient Association. This one, put some thoughts about the controversial issues topic. One, when we did get input from teachers, the language that caught most people's eye and they commented on was language that was then deleted. So, you know, that was the stuff that really caught people's eyes and got the attention. In further conversation with folks, it does seem that perhaps the new language is not really necessary because our curriculum, you know, we're directed to follow the curriculum, which does not prevent controversial topics. It prevents content to be taught. You know, for instance, the example about the election, civics classes teach the process of an election and democracy, and it would not be if, you know, Mr. Sistani had to tell someone you cannot advocate for a candidate, you have to teach the curriculum. That would be entirely appropriate because, you know, advocating for one particular candidate would not be in the curriculum, but the process would be. So if we are following the curriculum, then, you know, a lot of those things won't be necessary. In further discussion with teachers too, it does seem that the new language it feels like something to run afoul of, not something that is protective, because here are all these things now that we could possibly do wrong. And also it does seem that some of the language is in response to things that I don't believe are happening. You know, teachers are teaching a balanced and factual content, and teachers are teaching students how to engage in these sorts of conversations in a, you know, courteous and professional manner. So it does feel like it's in response to things that I would hope are not happening in the classroom and shouldn't be happening. If they are happening, they should be addressed by administration. And I do think in general, the curriculum will always struggle to keep up with controversial topics because we can't possibly revise the curriculum quickly enough to cover everything that becomes controversial. And therefore it will have to I do like the old language a little bit better, as it doesn't give guidelines. They are generalized, but ultimately we'll have to rely on the professional judgment of the teachers in the class and the administrators in the building. So I just want to put that out there. Ms. Guernsey, thank you for your service as vice chair. And good night.
Thank you. Any other members of the public, if there are? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Jacobson, second by Mr. Lee, all in favor? 7-0. Thank you very much.
I love peanut butter.